The Shimin family also supported me? Did they fall on their heads recently? Asked Long Chen. Shimin Tianxiong had previously even fought Long Chen. They were clearly enemies. Why would the Shimin family support him? I'm also curious about this. But the Shimin family truly did express their support of you, saying that it was extremely unfair to have the Dragonblood Legion block the blood race alone. Furthermore, there was no proof to say that the Qi flow eruption was related to you. Subjective views were unjust. So with the three everlasting families supporting you, adding on the Martial Heaven Alliance, the divine families didn't state anything immediately. They simply said that they would have to take their time with this decision. The divine families also added that the current Martial Heaven continent cannot continue to have its people fighting each other. They ask all powers on the continent to work together against the outsiders. That's why I don't think anyone will try to target you during this time. You should reserve your temper to avoid a clash with the divine families, said Chu Jianying. For the divine families to not target Long Chen due to his conflict with the outer branches indicated that they had absolved him of that matter. Most likely, that was in deference to his talent. That was a good thing. She truly did wish for Long Chen to calm down and stop messing around. Long Chen nodded. I definitely won't do anything to the divine families. You can relax. I never take the initiative to provoke others. From the eastern wastelands to the central plains, he hadn't bullied anyone. Even when encountering enticing treasures, he had never killed their owners for them. All his enemies had found him first. If he hadn't fought back, he'd have been killed. It was strange now that he thought about it. Wherever he went, he encountered some blind people who wanted to provoke him. His current situation was something others had forced him into. In front of the yin-yang world, he had killed countless powerful experts, even killing 2 heirs of emperors, but apparently that still wasn't enough to intimidate his enemies. They continued to target him. This was basically a puzzle with no solution. Suddenly, one of Chu Jianying's rings began to flash. Startled, Chu Jianying checked it. This ring could be used for urgent messages, but it would only be for major matters. When she checked the news, she was shocked. What? Did something happen with the blood race? Asked Long Chen. No. The Dongfang family was suddenly attacked by the Sea Demon race. They tore down the Dongfang mansion, picked up Dongfang Yuyang, and slapped him in the face hundreds of times. When his face was unrecognizable and he was coughing up blood, they finally left. It seems that Dongfang Yuyang was on the verge of being bedeviled, said Chu Jianying. This news came out of nowhere. She didn't quite know what to think about it, or if she even believed it. Long Chen smiled. As expected, the 9 times 9 equals 83 had completely confused the sea demons. After just a few slaps, they had lost count. The news says that the sea demon race sent out 2 peak 12th rank sea demons as well as hundreds of thousands of others that surrounded the Dongfang family. Even the family head was blocked by them. He could only watch as Dongfang Yuyang was slapped. Furthermore, the one slapping him was the young man from the 6-horned sea serpent race that fought you in front of the yin-yang world. Just what is going on? Why would they start a feud with the Dongfang family? Chu Jianying was completely confused. She felt like her head wasn't working. Why would 2 completely unrelated powers suddenly start fighting? The sea demon race had provoked Long Chen in such a terrible way and then immediately went to the unrelated Dongfang family? Who knows? Perhaps they found Dongfang Yuyang ugly. For the first time, I feel like that little sea serpent isn't that bad, chortled Long Chen. The sea demon race had finally made their move. If they had continued waiting, Long Chen would have had to pay them a visit. But their move was even better than he had predicted. It seemed that the sea demon race themselves hated the Dongfang family for tricking them. The curious thing is that they didn't kill anyone. They just destroyed their manor and slapped Dongfang Yuyang. Chu Jianying continued to reread the news, growing more and more confused as to how this had happened. Suddenly she saw Long Chen's wily smile. She demanded, "Little fellow, you wouldn't know anything about this, right?" Long Chen hastily waved his hand. "How could I know anything? I'm just happy that the Dongfang family has been put in their place, haha." Thinking of how Dongfang Yuyang's sanctimonious face had been slapped into a pig's head, Long Chen couldn't hold back a laugh. Although he hadn't seen it, his imagination was quite satisfying. Seeing that expression of delight at his enemy's misfortune, Chu Jianying was speechless. This fellow really didn't know how to hide his feelings. Chu Jianying asked about the Dragon Blood Legion situation, and upon learning that they were all in seclusion and training, she was put at ease. She told Long Chen to focus on advancing as soon as possible and then left. After Chu Jianying left, Long Chen sent a photographic jade to the Huayan sect. Following that, the entire continent began to buzz. Major affairs had been happening repeatedly during this short time, from the battle in front of the Yin-Yang world, Long Chen killing people from the outer branches of the divine families in the Grand Xia, the gathering held by divine families. Those were all topics of discussion in the cultivation world. However, just after the gathering, before the contents of the gathering even spread, one of the 4 everlasting families, the Dongfang family, was attacked by the sea demon race. If the photographic jades didn't spread, people wouldn't even believe this news. A huge army of sea demons had poured into the Dongfang family, tearing down buildings, and then Dongfang Yuyang had been caught and slapped hundreds of times until his face swelled up into a pig's head. This photographic jade didn't come from within the Dongfang family, but from someone outside. After all, when the sea demons had come onto the continent in such numbers, they had drawn attention, and quite a few people had secretly followed them to see what they were doing. As a result, those people had recorded a shocking scene in photographic jades. Just as people were stunned by this, another photographic jade spread. When that recording spread, people's jaws hit the floor. There were several scenes within that photographic jade. One of them was the scene of Long Chen killing his way into the Eastern Sea, and then there was him demanding an answer from the Sea King as to who had initiated the beast tide. The final scene was the most shocking one. In front of multiple Sea Kings, Long Chen had slapped a Sea King repeatedly, while that Sea King had simply received it without daring to move. That final scene made people feel like they were going crazy. He had slapped a Sea King's face? The Sea King was in existence on the same level as Taoist Heavenly Feather. Just what was Long Chen doing? After seeing everything within that photographic jade, people had a general understanding of what was going on. The sea demons had initiated a beast tide, and Long Chen had gone to demand an explanation from the sea demon race. The sea demons said that it was the Dongfang family who had instigated this, and so Long Chen had slapped them. Now the entire continent knew why the sea demon race would attack the Dongfang family and slap Dongfang Yang. The beast tide had actually been instigated by the Dongfang family to target Long Chen. Quite an uproar occurred upon that realization. When the beast tide had been initiated, there had been denouncements from throughout the continent against Long Chen. All the damage caused by the beast tide had been counted against Long Chen, but now they realized that it was the Dongfang family who had caused that beast tide and set up Long Chen to take the blame, making it so that he couldn't cultivate peacefully. Upon learning this truth, the people's condemnations turned against the Dongfang family. Their noble mask had been ripped off to reveal them as hypocrites. Dongfang Yuyang was especially hated, as he had always acted particularly righteous. The business of high-level treasures that the Dongfang family had bitterly set up was essentially torn down. They received curses from every direction. The one thing that people didn't understand was just where did Long Chen get the confidence to slap a Sea King's face? How had he managed to make them not dare to move even as he slapped them? Of course, this question couldn't be asked of the Sea Demon race. That would be suicide. Long Chen's photographic jade once more shook the continent, and Chu Jianying laughed. This little brat had even hidden this from her. The old man almost passed out from laughter. He then drank dozens of jugs of fine wine to celebrate. The various large powers of the continent also received copies of the photographic jades, but their reactions weren't the same. The Beitang, Nangong, and Shimen families all politely sent condolences, declaring their strong denouncement toward the sea demon race for their barbaric actions. And then there was nothing else. Pill Valley and the others were simply lost. They didn't understand how Long Chen had made it so that the Sea Kings didn't dare to fight back when he slapped them. That scene was too shocking. People kept a close eye on the Dongfang family to see if they would take revenge against the sea demon race, but the Dongfang family was silent. Dongfang Yuyang didn't appear again. It was unknown if he had entered seclusion or was busy meditating to adjust his mental state. After all, he had been beaten up in the middle of consolidating his realm and preparing to break through. At the time, there had been signs of him becoming bedeviled. Most likely his Dao heart had received a serious blow. Many people felt that Dongfang Yuyang would slow down his advancement to Nether Passage, because this setback could easily form a heart devil. The Dongfang family didn't say a word, but the divine families did send a warning to the sea demon race, telling them not to cause trouble. After that, the sea demon race fell silent. These tumultuous times finally calmed down. On this day, people came to the cloud-chasing heaven-swallowing sparrow race's territory. They came from the divine families. An old man leading a large group of followers wearing robes of the outer branches of the divine families had come. Only the elder had the word divine embroidered on the front of his robes with golden thread, indicating he was a true member of the divine families. Although the old man's hair was white, his face was dignified, and he had a lofty stature. His eyes were still bright and contained an obscure revolution of life and death within them. This little one greets the senior from the divine families. When the entire cloud-chasing heaven-swallowing sparrow race was still shocked at the arrival of people from the divine families, Long Chen stepped forward. The elder looked at Long Chen and nodded. Not bad. A wildly arrogant person must have the qualifications to be wildly arrogant. Excellent. It seemed that the elder's impression of Long Chen wasn't bad. Long Chen couldn't figure out what exactly this elder's origin was. Please come in. The elder nodded and followed Long Chen inside. The others of the outer branches followed without a word. These outer branch experts were also in the Nether Passage realm, and their auras were strong. They were most likely true experts tempered on the battlefield. Kei Yuju had been intent on accompanying them, but seeing that the elder didn't look at her at all, she decided to take her leave. Long Chen brought the elder into the guest hall. The two sat in the main chairs, but the rest of the outer branches stayed standing. I know that senior must be busy, so I won't waste any time on tea. May I know what guidance you have? Asked Long Chen directly. The elder smiled, seeming a bit surprised by Long Chen's direct style of conversation. It was truly rare for someone to be able to speak frankly with a figure on his level. He was one of the 4 members of the divine families who had attended the martial heaven gathering hosted by the divine families, a peak Nether Passage expert. It can't count as guidance. After all, you are someone who dares to slap a sea king in the face. I don't have those guts, laughed the elder. Long Chen was startled. It seemed that this elder wasn't hostile to him. In truth, Long Chen was a bit nervous inside. His wings hadn't grown to the point of being able to fight against the divine families, but the Pill Sovereigns would not allow him to retreat. If this elder had come in a demanding and overbearing manner, he really didn't know if he would have been able to control his temper. They were just tricked by me. Such a little trick isn't worthy of entering senior's eyes, said Long Chen. He knew that his photographic jade had shocked countless people. But the trick inside it would sooner or later be figured out. Not bad, to be both brazen yet cautious. The martial heaven continent lacks people like you. Little fellow, I have high hopes for you, praised the elder. Many thanks for senior's praise. Long Chen cupped his fists. All right, let's talk then. I came to discuss a certain matter with you. The current continent is split into 2 factions. One which strongly supports you and one which views you as its mortal enemy. Both sides are almost like water and fire, and the divine families do not wish to interfere in such a thing. However, since the Dark Era has come and a sovereign has not shown himself, the divine families have no choice but to take up the responsibility of leading the continent's experts against the invading races. Without resolving this conflict, there's no way for both factions to work together against the invaders. The elders of the divine families have discussed it and have come to one way to reconcile things. They wish to have you lead the Dragonblood Legion in holding the gates to the Yin-Yang world for 3 days. Why would I do that? Asked Long Chen. The members of the outer branches glared at him. In their eyes, this was completely disgraceful. You brazen, I've always been brazen, replied Long Chen coldly. This request was not something he liked the sound of. Long Chen could tell that this was partly due to Pill Valley's influence. Why should he be the only one defending? You. Shut up. The elders stopped that person. You are correct. The invasion of the blood race from the yin-yang world is the problem of the entire continent. Why should you be the only one to block them? Exactly. Long Chen nodded. In truth, this matter doesn't relate to Pill Valley's faction. They only proposed something that made us think. In truth, we also wish for your Dragonblood Legion to defend the yin-yang world alone. Of course, we will not let you do it for free. What will you give me? There are 3 things. First, the blood race's experts can be refined into immemorial essence blood. Every 10,000 pure-blooded blood race experts at the Life Star realm can be refined into 1 drop of immemorial essence blood. That 1 drop is extremely precious. An Empyrean who has reached the Life Star realm can consume 1 drop of the immemorial essence blood to have a chance of stimulating their spirit blood and connecting to their manifestation. Although it won't allow their manifestation to grow to the level of a Heaven's Soul manifestation, their combat power will definitely greatly improve. Normally, the bodies of the blood race are shared by the fighters as a reward, but if the Dragonblood Legion fights on its own, you will be getting all those corpses. No one will have the right to fight over them with you, said the elder. Long Chen hadn't known that the blood race's blood was so special. To be able to refine immemorial essence blood from it was quite shocking. Continue. However, just this one thing wasn't enough to move Long Chen. Although that was enticing compared to the danger, it didn't seem to be proportional. Second, while consolidating realms, a true life and death battle is a must for real geniuses. It just so happens that the 2 months until the yin-yang world seal breaks are perfect for all the geniuses to consolidate their realms. They can comprehend the essence of life and death. This can be considered a free trial, and I'm sure that after such a battle, a portion of your people would be able to comprehend the mysteries of life and death, said the elder. Long Chen's lips curled. That logic seems a bit forced. Other people's life and death trials are without danger, but fighting the blood race will be a true life and death battle. Some will definitely comprehend life and death, because those that don't will be dead. The blood race had definitely been preparing this entire time and had gathered a grand army. Long Chen had seen them through the Sovereign Seal. After so much time, who knew what the blood race had prepared? This second benefit was completely nonsense. Long Chen, pay attention to your tone. This is one of the Divine Family's great heaven elders. You should show some respect, said one of the people of the outer branches. The Divine Family's elders were ranked according to 3 ranks: Heaven, Earth, and Man, with Heaven Elders being the highest level. Even these people from the outer branches wouldn't dare to mess around in front of this elder, but Long Chen's words didn't have the slightest respect in them. The outer branches of the Divine Families had been walking throughout the continent for a while now, and everyone treated them respectfully, while the members of the outer branches had to treat the true members of the Divine Families with even more respect. But Long Chen didn't seem to care about this Heaven Elder in front of him. The elder frowned slightly and looked at that person. Can you shut your mouth? That member of the outer branch turned pale. All of them shut their mouths, not daring to say another word. The elder turned back to Long Chen. I haven't introduced myself. I am one of the Divine Family's Heaven Elders. I have the same surname as you, Long. You can call me Elder Long. Let's continue discussing the previous problem. The second reason truly is a bit forced, but it can still count as a benefit. Let's talk about the third one now. We only ask you to hold on for 3 days, and after 3 days, the Divine Families will replace you. Those are the bloodiest days, and if you can accomplish this mission, the Divine Families will open the Starfield Divine World for you. It can be considered a mental world, a sacred cultivation land for nether passage experts. The Starfield Divine World has never been open to the outside world, but to face the Dark Era this time, we must join forces. It will be open only to Heaven's Soul manifestation experts, and each power on the continent will only have a few spots to enter. If you succeed in your mission this time, then we will give every surviving member of the Dragonblood Legion a spot to enter, said Elder Long. What is the Starfield Divine World? It is an ancient divine world covering a star. There, your soul will form an illusory you, but it will be just like the real you. Within the Starfield Divine World, you can freely comprehend life and death. You can challenge trials, you can kill, and you can die. but those who die will have their souls returned to their physical bodies. Inside that place, you can die 10 times. To experience the chance between life and death, such an opportunity doesn't exist on the continent. It will allow your people to rapidly advance, said Elder Long. It could actually allow someone to experience death? That was a good thing that moved Long Chen. However, he still acted indifferent. This bait was quite enticing. Fourth, Long Chen was startled. There was more? Elder Long looked at Long Chen profoundly. If you can accomplish this mission, the divine families will consider letting you lead the battle against the Dark Era. When Elder Long said this, even those members of the outer branches were shocked. Let me lead the battle against the Dark Era? Long Chen shook his head. That's impossible. Pill Valley, the Shen beasts, the ancient races, the corrupt path, the ancient family alliance, they will immediately revolt. What kind of joke was that? If Long Chen were to be the leader, Pill Valley would immediately go crazy. Elder Long smiled. You're overthinking it. This upcoming Dark Era will be split across multiple battlefields. You would only be in charge of one of them. Of course, if you have outstanding talent in that regard and are able to remain impartial, being the head commander isn't out of the question either. However, that would depend on your own abilities. Furthermore, you still haven't agreed to these arrangements, so don't think too much for now. Long Chen knew that the divine families had to be a group of old scheming fellows. They were doing this in order to buy him while also appeasing Pill Valley and the others. As for the position of head commander, it meant nothing. It was far from a possibility. Long Chen didn't even consider it. On the other hand, the immemorial essence blood and the star field divine world were very moving. Both of them were important to the Dragon Blood Legion. If I agree, will there be people targeting us from behind? Asked Long Chen. Right now, everyone was doing their best to advance as fast as possible. If the Pill Fairy, Kunpengzi, and Tian Shezi were to break through to Nether Passage during this time, then if the Dragon Blood Legion was suddenly attacked, they wouldn't be able to fight back. Elder Long said, actually, this decision was made in consideration of the entire continent. As everyone attempts to break through, they are actually reducing their chances of breaking through. How can comprehending life and death be rushed? With such haste, you will only have incorrect insights and fall further from the right path. Even if they do comprehend life and death, they will need to steady their mental realms and have a heart like water before attempting to break through. So for so many geniuses to be trying to break through as fast as possible is actually contrary to cultivation. Everyone thinks their lives are in danger, so they want to break through quickly. This is not good for the martial heaven continent. Who knows how many geniuses will end up being stuck at this bottleneck because of their urgency. That's why I have come here in hopes that everyone can stop their hostility. If you accept this proposal, I will immediately issue the heavenly divine writ saying that if anyone attacks the Dragon Blood Legion, they will be annihilated by the full forces of the divine families. Of course, during that period, the Dragon Blood Legion is also not allowed to attack anyone. You would only be able to initiate an attack if you had a reason that goes through the divine families. This is a guarantee of protection for the entire continent, and this way people will be able to relax. Rather than trying to barge through this bottleneck, they can advance steadily. Hearing this, Long Chen was much more at ease. With the divine families as a guarantor, everyone could have a ceasefire. That was a good thing. Although Lu Ruyan controlled the life and death essence of the yin-yang immortal grass, allowing 12,000 Dragon Blood warriors to fully comprehend life and death was something that would take a long time. Requiring everyone to advance together put them at a disadvantage in speed. If the divine families could slow things down, that was good for Long Chen. The Dragon Blood Legion needed time. After thinking about it, Long Chen said, to tell the truth, this proposal is very moving. But there is just one problem. If the other side has an expert on the level of a fourth step Nether Passage expert such as yourself, we will definitely not be able to hold them. Elder Long smiled. There is no need to worry. If any fourth step Nether Passage experts mobilize, the divine families will naturally stop them. But you worry too much. Even if the sovereign seal breaks, it will leave behind a remnant sovereign pressure. That sovereign pressure will cling to the blood race's experts, preventing the strongest members of the blood race from passing through. You will most likely be fighting those at the Life Star realm. At most, Nether Passage experts would only occupy 30% of them, and they would definitely be at the 3rd step or below. When it comes to the blood race, their cultivation base doesn't matter that much. They have geniuses with pure bloodlines. The purer their bloodlines, the stronger they are. They will also come in great numbers. It will be a tough battle. Long Chen cupped his fists. Many thanks for your warning. Long Chen felt that this Elder Long wasn't bad. Although he seemed stiff and aloof, that was understandable considering his position. Elder Long suddenly sent a spiritual transmission. In truth, the request to have the Dragonblood Legion fight alone is mostly a show. We haven't restricted your numbers, understand? Long Chen smiled. It seemed that Elder Long was indicating that he could cheat. If the pressure grew too great, then he could just use some little tricks. For example, recruiting some powerful experts to the Legion. He could pull in any of his friends. What could anyone say? He hadn't broken any rules. He was still defending with just the Dragonblood Legion's people. Many thanks. This time, Long Chen was sincerely grateful. This was basically an unlosable battle to him. The elder smiled faintly and said, "So have you agreed?" "Yes. For such a good thing I will have to agree. I'm grateful that you've taken such a long journey to come here. If I have the chance, I will definitely repay you." Long Chen cupped his fists in thanks. This reminder from Elder Long basically made Long Chen owe him a favor. However, he had said it spiritually so that the members of the outer branches wouldn't hear it. Long Chen merely vaguely indicated that he would remember this favor. Since that's the case, I will immediately issue the Heavenly Divine Writ. You should prepare yourself. I wish you victory in the upcoming battle. Elder Long stood. I'll do my best. Long Chen also stood. He personally sent Elder Long and his people out of the cloud, chasing heaven-swallowing sparrow race's territory. As expected, the divine families were very efficient. The very next day, the major powers received the Heavenly Divine Writ. The divine families announced that to placate everyone's rage, Long Chen had promised to defend the gate to the Yin-Yang world for 3 days on his own when the sovereign's seal broke. Also, for the next half a year, no one was permitted to attack Long Chen and his Dragonblood Legion, or they would be going against the Heavenly Divine Writ and publicly offending the divine families. During this time, everyone was to enter a ceasefire. If there were any conflicts, they could be mediated by the divine families. If mediation was ineffective, then a battle would require the consent of the divine families. When the Heavenly Divine Writ came out, the continent, which had been in a deathly silence, became lively once more. The various geniuses came out of their seclusion. It was like they had been suffocating underground and finally had a chance to breathe. The cities once more became noisy. Of course, this writ didn't stop conflict, but no one dared to indiscriminately kill people. Even the Bloodkill Hall's assassins could walk out in broad daylight. Even the Righteous Path and the Corrupt Path's experts might be sharing a table before pointing and cursing at the other. The Heavenly Divine Writ released the heavy tension. Everyone had been afraid. Long Chen was afraid that others would advance to Nether Passage first and attack the Dragonblood Legion, while the others were afraid Long Chen would advance first and destroy them. Long Chen directly gave the Dragonblood Legion a vacation, telling them to go out and have fun. When Chu Jianying heard that Long Chen was to defend against the blood race on his own, she immediately went over to demand details. Only when she learned that Elder Long had discussed this with him did she relax. When she heard that this elder of the divine families had had a good opinion of Long Chen and given him a hidden reminder, she was completely put at ease. The worst-case scenario for her was for Long Chen to start fighting the divine families. In truth, it wasn't just the Dragonblood Legion who were given a vacation. Practically all the continent's young disciples were sent out. They were like freed prisoners. The continent gradually entered its liveliest state. People had been stunned by the divine families when they sent out 4 peak Nether Passage experts to the Martial Heaven Gathering. No one dared to go against the Heavenly Divine Writ. With their rules, they were very safe. The topic that everyone was discussing now was the matter of Long Chen defending the gate to the Yin-Yang world alone. People guessed that Long Chen had finally caved into pressure and lowered his head to the divine families and Pill Valley. After all, whoever fought the blood race would be facing a bloody battle. The first clash would probably be unprecedented throughout history. Let alone 3 days, even 1 day would probably be too difficult to hold on. Quite a few people began to cry out at the injustice of it, but there was nothing to be done. This matter was set in stone. Nangong Ziyu and Beitang Rushuang came to Longchen. At that time, only Longchen, Guoran, and Xiachen remained, with everyone else roaming around. They were refining pills, forging armor, and making formation discs respectively. Have you gone crazy? How could you agree to that? Is this any different from suicide? We all stood beside you, so even if you said no, the divine families wouldn't be able to do anything to you. Beitang Rushuang immediately began to shout, her chest bouncing and making Long Chen dizzy. Seeing that Long Chen was actually in the mood to look at her, Beitang Rushuang looked like she was about to beat him up. Long Chen, you've really been impetuous this time. The Dark Era is called the Dark Era because endless armies will invade, not letting us see the slightest light, the slightest hope. Nangong Ziyu sighed. Although they knew that Long Chen was powerful, the Dragonblood Legion would definitely take heavy losses in this battle. They didn't wish to see such a thing. They came over to see if there was any way they could help. Long Chen was grateful. He did have a few friends on this continent who would stand beside him at a critical moment. He told them about Elder Long's words and even subtly indicated that he might accept them into the Dragonblood Legion, making their eyes brighten. All right, I'll lead my people to join at that time. But remember, the rewards better not be lacking my portion. Beitang Rushuang's tone immediately changed. She was also set on that immemorial essence blood. Even if you didn't come, I'd have to come and beg for Fairy Rushuang's help, joked Long Chen. If he really couldn't hold on any longer, then the Martial Heaven Alliance, the Nangong family, and the Beitang family would be the second line. Long Chen was confident in being able to carry out this mission. Beitang Rushuang and Nangong Ziyu left. Long Chen continued working. Time passed quickly, and half a month later, the Dragonblood Legion gathered once more. The Dragonblood Legion had finished consolidating their realms. After their vacation where they relaxed, Meng Qi, Chu Yao, Gu Yang, and the others had vaguely touched the barrier of comprehending life and death. Their comprehension of life and death grew clearer with every passing day. That was thanks to Lu Rian. The yin-yang energy left by the yin-yang immortal grass had many aspects corresponding to life and death. However, every person's comprehension and understanding of life and death was different. Every person had to rely on themselves. Many of the Dragonblood warriors were still in a hazy state when it came to comprehending life and death. This was a tough process that couldn't be rushed. Just as Elder Long had said, haste would only slow them down. After this adjustment, the Dragonblood warriors' comprehension speed ended up increasing. Boss, we're ready. Before Long Chen said anything, Guoran already opened his mouth. Loudmouth, you made me forget what I wanted to say, cursed Long Chen. The Dragonblood warriors laughed. Gu Yang cried out, Boss, the Dragonblood warriors live for battle. Our blood's boiling already. Fine, then I won't say anything. Let's move out. Long Chen waved his hand. Kei Yuzhu and the others were already prepared, and summoning their true bodies, they brought the Dragonblood warriors flying toward the yin-yang world. There were still many days until the seal broke, but Long Chen wanted to prepare things in advance. Upon arriving, they saw that many people had set up camp in the distance. It seemed that they had been waiting here for a while now. Fuck, they all came here to watch the show? Are we dancing monkeys? Cursed Guoran. Not all of them. This isn't a game. If we can't hold on, the other major powers will be forced to take action. The blood race cannot be allowed to break through, said Long Chen. At that time, Elder Long had already put it clearly. If he failed, then his reward would be gone. Long Chen was allowed to retreat at any time and allow others to block for him. However, that matter was not to be mentioned to the rest of the world. He was to keep that to himself. If he could pull it off, then good. If he couldn't, then he shouldn't force himself. Long Chen had only agreed because he had a way out. It could be said that these conditions were very favorable to him. When the Dragon Blood Legion arrived, it caused a ruckus. Various experts flew out from their camps to look at Long Chen. Senior apprentice brother Long Chen, I believe in you. You are the strongest warrior of the martial heaven continent. Just this heroism is something no one else can compare to, declared one of the righteous experts. Who else can remain calm facing the endless blood race? This heroism for the martial heaven continent, it is comparable to the sovereigns. Many righteous experts began to cheer Long Chen on. That was because many of the sects that had betrayed the Martial Heaven Alliance were now essentially empty places. Their elite disciples had left to rejoin the Martial Heaven Alliance. That was because of Yi Lingshan's promise. As long as they swore to fight for the lives of the continent, then the Martial Heaven Alliance's doors would be open to them. The battle in front of the Yin-Yang world had shown the true faces of the major powers. For some personal profit, the leaders of many sects had been bought by Pill Valley, making them betray the Martial Heaven Alliance. So many people had been bought that even the Martial Heaven Virtue Tablet had been suppressed. Thinking of that, the disciples of those sects were filled with regret. They hated the higher-ups of their sects for their selfishness and stupidity. In comparison, they felt Long Chen and Yi Lingshan to be of unshakable integrity. Even in the face of such opposition, they had not cowered. Facing the coalition army, facing the sea demon army, facing the emperor's heroic spirits, he had never frowned. He had faced them all bravely, unafraid of death, and this aspect had profoundly touched these disciples. They were all cultivators. Who didn't have dreams? Who didn't want to be a hero? Those disciples no longer wished to stay in their sects and live as opportunists, seeking nothing but profit. They had left their sects after the battle and joined the Martial Heaven Alliance. Some of the disciples from one sect had been surrounded by the experts of their sect and forced to submit. In their rage, those disciples had actually chosen to self-detonate. That news had shaken the righteous path. On that very day, Yi Lingshan had gone to that sect and killed the ones who had surrounded those disciples. She had taken back the corpses of those disciples. At the time, Yi Lingshan had said that any disciples who had the Martial Heaven Alliance in their hearts were disciples of the Martial Heaven Alliance. If anyone dared to interfere in their freedom, the Martial Heaven Alliance would immediately tear down that sect. Yi Lingshan had truly shocked people on that day. All the ones who had participated in stopping the disciples, including the sect leader, were personally killed by her. Pill Valley had sent people ahead of time, but Yi Lingshan had pointed her sword at those people, stating that this matter was a private matter of the righteous path, and if anyone dared to interfere, the Martial Heaven Alliance would not mind going to war. The experts from Pill Valley were scared away. After all, Yi Lingshan was not Chu Jianying. Who knew what she might do? From then onward, some of the sects that had betrayed the Martial Heaven Alliance began to ask to rejoin, but they were all rejected by Yi Lingshan. Her reasoning was that the Martial Heaven Alliance had given them two chances. The first rejection could be blamed on ignorance, but the second rejection was unforgivable. The Martial Heaven Alliance would never accept them again, so they could go back to their own homes. If they were bullied by others, they had better think of their own ways of dealing with it. Yi Lingshan's gentle and tough methods combined had made it so the sects no longer dared to stop their disciples. They could only urge the latter to stay based on loyalty. However, the majority of those disciples were too disappointed in their sects, and so they chose to leave. They chose a new life. Staying there didn't let them see any hope. Yi Lingshan's methods had made Chu Jianying sigh emotionally. She sighed over how she had grown old. The older she grew, the more cautious she was. But youngsters had the drive to dare to do anything. A leader needed that courage. She finally felt ready to leave her position to Yi Lingshan. Even as countless righteous experts were filled with worship at the sight of Long Chen and the Dragon Blood Legion, a voice of dissent could be heard. It's his own fault, and it's simply a matter of course for him to deal with the consequences. How did that become being a hero in your mouths? Isn't the reason he's coming out because he feels guilty? If he didn't feel guilty, would he come out? The speaker was someone from the ancient family alliance. As soon as he said this, countless sharp sword-like gazes pierced into him. If looks could kill, he'd have been turned into minced meat. He had intentionally spoken loudly so that everyone could hear him. That included Long Chen and the others. Long Chen looked at him. He was an Empyrean. His manifestation had awakened, but it was not a heaven's soul manifestation, and his spirit blood had not awakened. Seeing Long Chen looking his way, he sneered, fearlessly continuing, "What are you looking at? Am I not allowed to speak the truth? It's trouble that you caused, so you should clean it up. Do you need others to praise you for this? What, you want to kill me to silence the truth? Don't forget, the continent is in a ceasefire. The heavenly divine writ has already been issued. Do you dare to go against the heavenly divine writ?" Long Chen slowly raised his hand and pointed a finger at that person, stunning everyone. That was a clear sign he was about to kill. That person immediately panicked, shouting, "I'm just saying the truth. If you kill me, it will be a public provocation of the divine families." "Boss, such a minor figure isn't worth you personally handling. This little one is willing to handle him." Guoran stepped forward, not waiting for Long Chen to reply. He appeared in front of that person in an instant. Long Chen had been intent on killing this loathsome fellow. He didn't care about people's misunderstandings about him, and he didn't care to explain himself. But every person had a temper, and the Pill Sovereign's will within him was especially easy to provoke. However, he hadn't expected Guoran to be even faster than him. The most shocking thing was that Guoran didn't even have his armor on. It was unknown just how he was doing this. Guoran arrived in front of that guy in an instant, his left hand punching toward his nose. But that person reacted quickly, twisting back, dodging. The unexpected thing, though, was that Guoran's punch was a fake. His right hand was the true attack, and it slapped that person across the face. Long Chen and the others were shocked. When did Guoran become an expert in close-range battle? Without his armor, his combat power should be essentially zero. That person was dizzy from being slapped. Before he could recover, Guoran grabbed his hair. "Who let you talk crap?" Guoran smashed his knee into that person's face 3 times in a row, causing a crunching sound that made people wince. That person's head almost exploded. When did Guoran become so amazing? Gu Yang and the others stared in shock, as if they didn't recognize Guoran. How was he so powerful without his armor? His movements were free and flowing. It was like he was a true master. "Guoran noticed many flaws in his armor from the last fight," said Xiaqin. "He found many areas where his soft armor was sluggish when joining with his battle armor. After going back, he changed many parts of his soft armor and added some special runes based on Boss's fighting style. Doesn't Guoran's current fighting style look a bit similar to Boss's?" Hearing that explanation, everyone came to a sudden understanding. No wonder Guoran's movements looked a bit familiar. It truly did look a bit similar to Long Chen's fighting style. So he was imitating the boss. Boom. Guoran sent that person flying with a kick. Looking down on him from above, he arrogantly said, "I, Guoran, will not kill some nameless fool. Report your name so I can see if you're qualified for me to kill you." How brazen! Who dares to kill people during the ceasefire of the heavenly divine writ? Just at this moment, a group of people appeared wearing robes of the divine family's outer branches. They were all Nether Passage elders and gloomy-faced. They were looking coldly at Long Chen. "Long Chen, don't be foolish. If you dare to kill people indiscriminately, you will force us to subdue you under the heavenly divine writ," warned one of those elders. "Haha." The disciple of the ancient family alliance pointed at Guoran and cursed, "Just a dog also dares to shout. Weren't you very arrogant? Didn't you want to kill me? Then come." The arrival of the divine family's outer branches made the disciple feel like he had a backer strong enough for him to be arrogant. "Boss, what do we do?" demanded Guoran furiously. Long Chen icily replied, "Do you even need to ask? Is the Dragonblood Legion ever afraid? Kill him. Kill whoever blocks you." Arrogance. The elders were infuriated. But before they could do anything, Guoran transformed into a streak of light that appeared in front of the disciple. His speed was even greater than when he had first moved. That disciple was horrified, not expecting that Long Chen would dare to kill him with even the outer branches of the divine families appearing. He barely had time to take out a divine item before being cut in two. Blood splashed. His head was cut off by Guoran's saber. Holding his head, Guoran returned to Long Chen's side. His movements were very clean. Everyone had to admit that the current Guoran looked quite suave. "Elder Xiaofeng, save me!" cried that disciple's head. That shout made Long Chen's gaze turn even colder. He looked at the head elder, while that elder's expression immediately changed. However, he forced himself to remain calm and he shouted, "Long Chen, release him or don't blame us for not being courteous." Long Chen directly pressed a finger against that disciple's forehead and conducted his soul search. That disciple's soul twisted and tore itself apart. He was dead. Long Chen had actually ignored their warning and the heavenly divine writ, shocking the various righteous experts. Just what was he planning on doing? Long Chen. The elder's expressions completely changed. Long Chen was publicly challenging the dignity of the divine families. "Shut up. If you keep talking, I'll kill you all," shouted Long Chen, his killing intent overflowing. His killing intent was so powerful that even these elders shivered. His gaze was like a blade. Looking at the one called Xiaofeng, he demanded, "Speak. Why would you target me?" Through his soul search, he learned that this person had only provoked him because Xiaofeng had told him to. He was the one behind this. Long Chen had just come to an agreement with the divine families, and they already did something like this to him. Just what were they doing? What are you talking about?" shouted Xiaofeng, his voice shuddering in the face of Long Chen's killing intent. "You refuse to say? Then we can do a soul search." Long Chen stepped forward. The other elders were infuriated. They didn't know what was going on, but to attack members of the outer branches of the divine families was an insult to all of them. They unleashed attacks. They were third-step nether passage experts, but as soon as they tried to stop Long Chen, they revealed their true power. They were truly a group of people with empty realms. They had the cultivation base but not the corresponding power. With a single punch, those elders were blasted back, coughing up blood. They almost died from that single punch. A bunch of old sticks raised like princes. You dare to stop my boss? Truly courting death. Gu Yang and the others sneered. So these elders were nothing more than decoration. They weren't true experts. Zhao Feng crushed a teleportation talisman in his terror, but before the talisman could take effect, Long Chen had grabbed his neck, holding him like a chicken. Speak. Why did you target me? I'll give you one chance, or I'll use a soul search. Long Chen's finger was already pressed against Zhao Feng's forehead. Just at this moment, yellow liquid flowed out of Zhao Feng's pants. The experts present looked at each other oddly. This previously supreme and arrogant expert of the outer branches of the divine families had pissed himself in fear. A bad smell filled the air. Long Chen almost blasted Zhao Feng to pieces, but it seemed that Zhao Feng had some status, so Long Chen didn't want to kill him before being sure of what had happened. Are you speaking? Demanded Long Chen. I'll tell. Zhao Feng was just opening his mouth when the sky twisted. A giant formation disk appeared along with tens of thousands of experts. Experts of the divine families. Startled cries rang out. These people were wearing robes of the divine families. Although they were also third-step nether passage experts, their auras were 10 times more condensed than these elders. Long Chen, what is going on? A middle-aged man gloomily walked out. He was tall and broad-shouldered and had a square face with sideburns. His gaze was sharp and bright, giving Long Chen a sense of pressure. This was Long Chen's first time feeling such a strong pressure from a third-step nether passage expert. This person had to be extremely powerful. May I ask who you are? Asked Long Chen cautiously. I am Chengfeng. I was sent by Elder Long to oversee the upcoming battle against the blood race. What are you doing? The battle hasn't even started, and you're already killing people. Are you disregarding the divine families? Demanded Chengfeng. Before Long Chen could speak, the other elders of the outer branches began to shout. Reporting to Elder Shen, we saw Long Chen acting wildly and unreasonable, disregarding the heavenly divine writ dash. Shut up. I wasn't asking you. Chengfeng glanced at them furiously, making them instantly shut up. Shen Chengfeng looked at Long Chen, looking like he required a reasonable explanation. There were also tens of thousands of Nether Passage experts behind him looking at Long Chen. They didn't say a word, but the killing intent coming from them was ice cold. Long Chen instantly realized that these people were the backup that the divine families had left for this place. If he couldn't defend this place or something unexpected happened, they would handle the blood race. However, the battle had yet to start. They had been summoned by a secret art from the outer branches, and seeing Long Chen holding the neck of one of the members of the outer branches, they were naturally angry. Long Chen answered, "Why are you asking me? I should be the one asking you. If the divine families have already agreed to place the Dragonblood Legion here, why are the divine families still making trouble for us? Why did you send someone to antagonize me? Do the divine families like using these kinds of sinister schemes? Who is using sinister schemes? Speak clearly. If you're just trying to tarnish the name of the divine families, then even if I have to be punished by Elder Long, I'll have to punish you first," said Shen Chengfeng coldly. "Since you're sent here by Elder Long, I'll trust you for now. I'll leave this person to you. You can ask him what he did," sneered Long Chen, tossing Zhao Feng to Shen Chengfeng. Shen Chengfeng grabbed him and frowned. The scene from Zhao Feng pissing himself irritated him. The face of the divine families had been lost by him. "Speak. What happened?" demanded Shen Chengfeng. Having escaped from Long Chen's devil grasp, Zhao Feng's guts grew again. He angrily said, "It was Long Chen indiscriminately killing someone dash." Shen Chengfeng directly slapped Zhao Feng, making his skin split open. Killing intent raged in his eyes. "If you still don't tell the truth, I'll be the one doing the soul search. I just came from the ancient battlefield, and I don't want to hear your nonsense." Shen Chengfeng was an Earth Elder of the divine families. That was a high status, and he was actually the youngest of all the Earth Elders. He was also someone Elder Long had high aspirations for, or he wouldn't have sent him to guard this place. Shen Chengfeng was a true expert that had killed his way out of a pile of dead people. Could Zhao Feng really hide his spiritual fluctuations from him? To lie in front of him even after all this, Shen Chengfeng was a hair away from killing Zhao Feng himself. Zhao Feng shuddered and almost pissed himself again. His voice quivered as he said, "It was Elder Ye's orders. I was to find some way to antagonize Long Chen." "Which Elder Ye?" Shen Chengfeng's expression changed. "Elder Yi Yaochen." Shen Chengfeng's expression grew uglier once more, and he suddenly slapped Zhao Feng with such force that he exploded. The other elders were stunned. Even now, they didn't understand what was going on. They did know an Elder Yi Yaochen. He was also an Earth Elder. But why would he target Long Chen? After killing Zhao Feng, although Shen Chengfeng's expression was still gloomy, his killing intent had vanished. Turning to Long Chen, he had mixed emotions on his face. "Can we find someplace to talk? I will represent the divine families in apologizing to you over this matter." Shen Chengfeng and Long Chen left the entrance to the Yin-Yang world and found a secluded place. Shen Chengfeng sighed. "Whether or not you apologize doesn't mean anything to me. What I want to know is why they would target me." "Who is Yi Yaochen?" asked Long Chen. Shen Chengfeng hesitated. He shook his head. "This matter is too complicated. It is not convenient for me to say anything about it. But don't worry, Elder Long has a very high opinion of you. That's why he called me out of the ancient battlefield. But I can tell you this much, take advantage of this chance. The Star Field Divine World is extremely important to Nether Passage experts. Before coming, I investigated you. There was one thing you said that I like. Cultivation is to live with dignity. But in this world, just living is already very difficult. As for living with dignity, that's even harder. Hence, work hard to obtain your spots in the Star Field Divine World this time. It will not only allow you to live longer, but it will also give your voice greater priority." Shen Chengfeng didn't directly talk about what had caused this. It seemed that it was taboo to him. "Then I want to know, if such a thing happens again, what will you do?" asked Long Chen. "Don't worry, I will warn them. Such a matter will definitely not occur within the short term," guaranteed Shen Chengfeng. "It wouldn't happen in the short term, meaning it would happen in the future?" Long Chen seemed to have grasped something. The waters in the interior of the divine families were very deep. I don't like being a chess piece for others. Long Chen shook his head. Chengfeng smiled. Heaven and earth are the board, and all living things are the game pieces. All people have their own destinies set for themselves. Isn't working hard at cultivation means to get stronger to jump out of the chessboard and find a different destiny? Without power, you will not be qualified to jump out of the chessboard. No one can escape being a chess piece, except at the final moment where we see if a chess piece can escape its fate and become the player moving the pieces. Long Chen was startled and looked at Chengfeng more closely. He hadn't expected him to have such a sharp view of the world. Thank you for your advice. Long Chen cupped his fists. Chengfeng shook his head. You're too courteous. I was born at the wrong time, and it has worn down my sharpness. A chess piece remains a chess piece. But you have maintained your sharpness. It seems that your character will not change, so there are only two possibilities. Either you manage to escape the board, or you will be destroyed. I hope it's the former, so don't let any chances to get stronger slip by you. Opportunities lie within danger. The greater the danger, the greater the opportunity. It will depend on whether or not you can pass it or not. Long Chen nodded. He felt that Chengfeng was not bad. The person that Elder Long had sent was similar to him. How about you let this matter pass like this? Once you are stronger, you can handle it yourself, proposed Chengfeng. Since you put it this way, what can I say? Long Chen shrugged. If he kept making a fuss about this matter, demanding an explanation from the divine families would be rude. Chengfeng was clearly protecting him on this matter. Long Chen felt that the divine families definitely had people from outside the world. He didn't know their secrets. Perhaps this matter was related to their own internal conflict. Just as Chengfeng said, quibbling over this was meaningless. In fact, forcing it might be unfavorable to him. Since Chengfeng had said to let it go and wait until he was stronger to avenge it, Long Chen could only accept it. Chengfeng smiled and turned to leave. However, after a few steps, he suddenly paused and looked back. The interior of the divine families is complicated. But Elder Long has always been impartial and is a true man. If you have difficulties, he will help you. Look after yourself. Long Chen nodded and cupped his fists. For Chengfeng to actually say such a thing, he could be viewed as a friend. Chengfeng left with his men, but not before scolding the people from the outer branches, saying not to activate the forbidden emergency signal for such unimportant matters. When one of them mentioned that Long Chen had gone against the heavenly divine writ, Chengfeng sneered. The heavenly divine writ clearly stated that no one was allowed to attack Long Chen. Those attacks included words. After saying that, Chengfeng left, leaving the members of the outer branches gloomy. Hey, aren't you very arrogant? Keep being arrogant. Guoran laughed at them. The people of the outer branches were nothing more than dogs of the true divine families. All they knew to do was use the prestige of their masters to intimidate others. You. The members of the outer branches trembled in fury. What you? Did you not hear the words of your master? No one is allowed to attack the Dragonblood Legion. Even words can constitute an attack. Are you cursing me? Taunted Guoran. The other experts that had come were all stunned. The divine families were actually so protective of Long Chen that they didn't even care about him killing members of the outer branches. They also saw that Zhao Feng had been used by someone else. It seemed that the one who had used him had quite a status, to the point that Chengfeng was unable to do anything to them over this matter. This matter was settled like this. However, after this, no one dared to be the slightest bit disrespectful to Long Chen. Long Chen was unafraid of the divine families, and no rules could restrict him. If they provoked him, that would purely be courting death. The members of the outer branches turned to leave. Hold it. Long Chen suddenly opened his mouth. What do you want? We haven't provoked you. Their expressions instantly changed. The divine families told me they would send someone to cooperate with us. Long Chen sneered at their frightened appearance. They only knew how to bully the weak. Hearing that, those elders sighed with relief. One of them said, "We'll send someone later. I want them now." If you stall my important affairs, are you able to accept the consequences? Shouted Long Chen. He was worried about these old bastards stalling. We'll arrange things within 2 hours, said the elder with no other choice. He really had been planning on dragging this out until Long Chen had to acknowledge them. The person that the divine families were sending was an expert on the blood race's history and combat power. They had to be skilled in differentiating the different members of the blood race and their divine abilities. That was very important to Long Chen. They weren't worried about Long Chen not coming to them for such an important asset. But Long Chen had easily seen through that little ploy. Senior apprentice brother Long Chen, if you need anything from us, just ask. One of the righteous path's experts ran forward. Yes, senior apprentice brother Long Chen, although we can't participate in the battle, whatever you need as support is no problem. We can do it. That's right, we can help out. Please, senior apprentice brother Long Chen, don't be courteous. With such a huge battle coming, the Dragon Blood warriors should rest. Leave the work to us. More and more of the righteous path's experts ran over. Although they wore robes of their various sects, they all had the word alliance embroidered on the front of their robes. They were all on the same side. Facing these people's ardent emotions, Long Chen smiled. Many thanks, brothers. It just so happens we need to arrange some things, and we might need your help. But let me say this first, there are no wages. But there's good wine and food. All right. To drink with the Martial Heaven Continent's #1 Legion will be enough for me to brag for a lifetime. All right, then brothers, we're going to rest. Once we discuss and confirm things, we can work together, said Long Chen. The righteous disciples returned to their tents excitedly, waiting for Long Chen's summons. Those tents were transportation formations capable of connecting to their sections. If anything happened, the experts from those sects could immediately come here as reinforcements. Long Chen didn't bother setting up a transportation formation. There was no need to. The cloud-chasing heaven-swallowing sparrow race's experts didn't need much time at all to fly over. Long Chen walked over to the entrance of the Yin-Yang world. The space here was quivering, and the sovereign seal was already starting to dim. The inside was a mass of primal chaos. It was impossible to see through it. Xia Chen and Guoran got to work, surveying the terrain. They needed to make the most arrangements. During this battle, there could be no failure, as it would relate to the lives of the Dragon Blood warriors. Senior apprentice brother Long Chen, I was assigned to you by the 5th elder. Suddenly, a shy voice rang out. Long Chen looked back to see a short, slightly dark-faced woman standing nervously there. Long Chen instantly understood that the old idiots from the divine families had sent him a completely ordinary person to anger him. Those old fellows really were idiots. Don't be afraid. Can I ask if those old fellows don't like me? Asked Long Chen. The woman was uneasy at being asked that, but in the end she nodded. Someone like that is able to be an elder? The higher-ups of the outer branches must be blind, sneered Long Chen. They wanted to play such a ridiculous game with him? This was far too immature for Long Chen. The woman was too nervous to even speak in front of Long Chen, afraid of angering him. Tell me, do you understand the blood race? Yes. The woman seemed to have found some hope. I was first place in history in the college. The college? Long Chen was startled. Through her explanation, Long Chen learned that she was called Li Jing and was someone with no background, no support to rely on within the outer branches. She had a bit of talent but was never given an important position. She was even squeezed out by others. To use her words, someone ugly with no background wasn't viewed favorably no matter how hard they worked. When she had been sent here to Long Chen's side, she had first been delighted, thinking that her efforts were finally being rewarded. Only when she saw the way that other people were looking at her did she sense something wrong. Then when she heard that the outer branches had created enmity with Long Chen, she understood that they had pushed her into a fiery pit. Unfortunately, the elders refused to let her run away, even saying that if she didn't do well, she would be expelled from the outer branches. She had come here knowing that she was most likely going to die. Hearing this, Long Chen didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Was he really so frightening? I don't understand. If you're so afraid of death, why not leave? The world is so big, and you are a life star expert. You can live happily no matter where you go, said Long Chen. I've never interacted with the outside world. I'm afraid. Li Jing lowered her head. She wasn't afraid of walking toward death but was afraid of the foreign outside world? Long Chen couldn't quite comprehend that thinking. You don't need to be afraid. Those old bastards might want to screw with me, but I won't make things hard on you. I've arranged things with the divine families to have someone with knowledge about the blood race with me in battle. Since you say you understand them, I'll trust you for now. Why don't you tell me about the blood race's history, their combat power, and their experts, said Long Chen. He was testing Li Jing. If she actually knew nothing about the blood race, he would immediately go to the outer branches and drag out those elders. He wouldn't stop until he had slapped them to the point that their heads reflected their dog-like nature. Hearing this, Li Jing brightened. She even seemed to grow more confident. The blood race comes from the blood pool star field. They cultivate bloodline divine abilities, and powerful runes flow within their blood. Their blood contains all their power. Their realms aren't much different from those of the human race. The only difference is that the core of their power isn't in their dantians but in their hearts. Based on the records, they have 93 races with various talents. They can be roughly split into 3. Li Jing did seem to be a master of this particular knowledge, and she gave Long Chen a detailed explanation of the blood race. She knew how to differentiate them and what kind of special attacks they had. Which ones were specialized in physical power, which were specialized in spiritual attacks. She knew them all. Long Chen ended up gathering all the Dragon Blood warriors so that they could all listen. Only once they were familiar with their enemies could they come up with a strategy. Young lady, you're not bad. You know a lot, praised Long Chen. This Li Jing was truly useful. She not only knew history, but she even had some of her own opinions sprinkled in amongst her information, which related to their weaknesses. Although they had yet to even start fighting against the blood race, just relying on Long Chen's own experience and Li Jing's conjecture, they could come up with a battle plan. Many thanks for senior apprentice brother Long Chen's praise. All my years of studying are finally being useful. Hopefully, others won't laugh at me in the future. After talking with Long Chen for so long, she found that he wasn't as terrifying as what she had heard. She didn't sense any feeling of disgust toward her looks, and she found that not one member of the Dragon Blood Legion looked down on her. They were all listening seriously. It seems that we need to thank those old fellows. Your knowledge is very useful for us, said Long Chen. My mother said that an ugly person has to study. It seems that she was right. Even Li Jing began to joke around in the Dragon Blood Legion's lax atmosphere. Looks can't be eaten, but actual ability can. You don't need to sell yourself short. Plus, you aren't even ugly, said Long Chen. It was true, Li Jing wasn't ugly. She would probably be viewed as average. But in this world there were many ways of improving one's looks. In a world of beautiful girls, she ended up appearing ugly. The fact that she didn't go around changing her looks showed that she had her own strong views about this. Dark Lady Cough, you don't mind if I call you this, right? Asked Guoran awkwardly. Meng Qi and the others glared at Guoran. Who would call someone by their short point like this? It's fine. Dark Lady's a lot better than what I get called normally. Li Jing waved her hand. No, I just think Dark Lady makes us feel especially close, don't you think? Explained Guoran. It's fine. You can all call me Dark Lady or Dark Girl, said Li Jing indifferently. That's right, everyone can call each other what you want. For example, that Baldy, you can call him Bald Brother or Big Brother Shiny. These two also have dark faces and you can call them Earth Brothers. As for my handsome and stylish self, you can call my big brother handsome. Gu Yang, Li Qi, and Song Mingyuan imitated vomiting, making others laugh. Dark sister, why are you crying? I won't call you dark anymore if you don't like it. Li Jing is fine. Guoran suddenly saw Li Jing crying. No, it's just, I have no friends. Others only bullied me. Li Jing tried to hold back her crying. Li Jing had her own story. She had always been squeezed out of things amongst the outer branches. She was getting emotional with everyone joking around here. Dark sister, don't be afraid, I'll make you a powerful set of armor that will allow you to crush anyone who bullies you, promised Guoran. No, no, Li Jing hastily waved her hand. Clearly, she didn't like fighting. Long Chen glared at Guoran, making him stop teasing this guileless woman. He waved his hand, sending Guoran and the others back to work. Now that they knew more about the blood race, they could finish their preparations. When Long Chen was alone with Li Jing, he asked, "I'm curious, why would the blood race attack the martial heaven continent?" "They want our root qi. The blood race has spirit blood, but it lacks spirit roots. If they take our spirit roots, through some special methods, they can create their own spirit roots for themselves, just like how we refine them into immemorial essence blood," answered Li Jing. Only then did Long Chen understand. It felt that the blood race viewed the martial heaven continent as a pasture. They wanted their spirit roots. "Then what do you know about the Devil Spirit Mountain's devil race?" asked Long Chen. "I'm sorry, senior apprentice brother Long Chen. Before coming, the elders warned me that I was only permitted to answer questions relating to the blood race. Everything else is forbidden." "That's fine, I was just curious. It's not too important." Long Chen hastily comforted her, knowing that she felt bad. He wasn't about to force her to betray her orders. Long Chen continued asking about the blood race. He also asked about how Sovereign Mo Li had suppressed the blood race. According to Li Jing, back then, the blood race had occupied over 50% of the Central Plains. That battle had lasted over 10 years, with rivers of blood flowing. Sovereign Mo Li had risen at that time, charging to the peak of the martial path and leading the experts of the continent against the blood race. In the end, he killed the leader of the blood race and sealed the entrance to the Yin-Yang world. However, the passage between the two worlds had mysterious origins, and eventually, every now and then, the Yang world would face the continent, allowing the continent's experts to enter the Yin-Yang world. The blood race used the Yin-Yang world as their garden, but the continent's experts had then started plucking their fruit. There were many inexplicable aspects about this, aspects that even Li Jing didn't know. The information within the ancient records had many holes that couldn't be explained with just logic. "Even the divine family's history is incomplete?" asked Long Chen. Long Chen was growing wary. Were the historical records really incomplete, or someone had intentionally concealed a portion of history to mislead people? Or was it that because of the sovereigns, there were many things that couldn't be exposed? Long Chen felt that this world was hiding far too many secrets. Just as Long Chen and Li Jing were talking, more and more experts gathered here. Xia Chen and Guoran had already discussed it and wanted to start setting up their arrangements. During this battle, there couldn't be the slightest mistake. "Brothers, work hard. There'll be wine and meat at night." Guoran and Xia Chen were directing the Righteous Path's experts who had come to help. They had built giant crisscrossing channels in the earth so deep that they required earth cultivators to strengthen and stabilize. Every channel had dozens of formations set up within it. Originally, this work was supposed to be left for the Dragonblood warriors, but with such a big battle coming, the Dragonblood warriors needed to focus and prepare themselves to make sure they stayed in their peak state. It just so happened that since many people wanted to help, they could rest. Furthermore, if Long Chen rejected them, it would be rude. "Senior apprentice brother Long Chen, aren't you afraid that some of these people don't have good intentions?" Li Jing had become Long Chen's attendant. Seeing Long Chen using strangers for such important work, she couldn't help giving him a warning. If there was the slightest slip or hole in a formation, it could cause a catastrophe. Long Chen smiled. "Kindness is rare. We're only letting them do the most basic work. The details will all be left to Xia Chen and Guoran to complete. Furthermore, such an intricate grand formation requires over 10 full inspections and various tests to confirm its perfection." If Li Jing could think of it, then Long Chen could as well. Although the current Righteous Path had reached an unprecedented unity, with so many people, no one dared to say that there weren't some undercover agents. When Long Chen had asked Xia Chen if it was possible for someone to mess with his formations during the building process, Xia Chen had directly and arrogantly said that if someone was capable of such a thing right under his gaze, he would have to kowtow and beg to become their apprentice. Since Xia Chen was so confident, Long Chen was happy to let the Dragonblood warriors rest. They still had plenty of time. After a day of work, they could drink. As a result, these righteous disciples ended up celebrating to a crazy extent. The meat they were eating belonged to peak 12th rank magical beasts. The wine that they were drinking came from the wine god palace. It had to be known that the wine god palace's wine was something that they hadn't dared to even dream of being able to taste. This wine contained its own special realms inside. When drinking it, they only dared to sip it slowly to fully savor it. As for the wine that Long Chen had gotten out of Tu Qianshang, it was so intense that one disciple ended up catching fire after drinking it, scaring the others into not daring to try it. They worked during the day and drank during the night. They could even talk and laugh with a peerless expert like Long Chen. These righteous disciples had never dreamed of such a thing. As for the experts that had come from other powers, they could only swallow their saliva as the scents of wine and meat drifted their way. They didn't dare to make a sound. After one night, more righteous experts came running over to offer their help. Some of those disciples had sent news back to their sects that there was wine to drink and meat to eat here. They could even listen to Long Chen's comprehension about cultivation. Hence, the righteous path's disciples flocked to this place. Some even exited seclusion just to come over. You're all not cultivating? Long Chen was startled to see the number of righteous disciples that had run over. There were over 800,000 of them. Senior apprentice brother Long Chen, we came to work. I heard there's wine and meat, plus we can hear you expound on the Tao. That's way better than cultivating, said one person excitedly. Senior apprentice brother Long Chen, don't worry, if there are too many of us, we won't eat or drink your meat and wine. Just helping you is enough. Seeing so many of the Martial Heaven Alliance's disciples, Long Chen bitterly smiled. Rather than properly cultivating, you came over here to eat and drink? If Yi Lingshan knew this, wouldn't she choke me to death? It's fine. I already said that they could open their stomachs until you're destitute. Suddenly, Yi Lingshan walked over like a fairy, surrounded by a group of experts. Long Chen was surprised that Yi Lingshan had also come. He hastily went over, putting on an act. This lowly Long Chen greets the Great Alliance head. At this time, Yi Lingshan had already put her hair into a bun, indicating that it wouldn't be long before she was bestowed the crown of the head of the Martial Heaven Alliance. However, the coronation was an important ceremony. Hence, during this time, Yi Lingshan would receive more and more of Chu Jianying's responsibilities and was starting to feel the pressure. The Martial Heaven Alliance's disciples laughed along with Yi Lingshan. Long Chen, you're now a figure that shakes the entire Martial Heaven continent. When will you start acting like a senior? No matter how great my fame, don't I still have to listen to the Alliance head's orders? I have to suck up whenever I can for fear of you making things hard on me in the future, said Long Chen. In front of outsiders, Long Chen always made his position clear with Yi Lingshan, being her subordinate. While many people knew that his position in the righteous path far exceeded Yi Lingshan's, this show of his made it clear that Yi Lingshan was the true Alliance head. Although the Martial Heaven Alliance was now united, there couldn't be two leaders. If that wasn't made clear, others might seek to drive in a wedge. Since Long Chen had chosen to reject Chu Jianying's suggestion back then, he had to be satisfied not being the leader. Even a green leaf had a purpose and had to know how to set off the flower. That was how to be a good leaf. Yi Lingshan also knew Long Chen's intentions and was not worried about Long Chen fighting over her position. If he really wanted it, she would immediately offer it to him with both hands. Regretfully, Long Chen had no interest in it. However, by saying this, Long Chen made the experts following Yi Lingshan feel much more comfortable. Yi Lingshan had her loyal followers, and this clear expression of his attitude assuaged their worries. Who would dare to make trouble for you now? Laughed Yi Lingshan. Even the outer branches of the divine families were afraid of him. I don't know. People just don't like me. Long Chen shrugged. Yi Lingshan said, well, so many of my people have been drawn over by you. If you let my people starve, I might stop liking you. I might not have much else, but I have wine and meat aplenty. I have many meat and wine friends, so I naturally prepared extra. Long Chen smiled. The construction this time was vast. Currently, only the first line of defense had been completed. Xia Chen was planning on setting up 9 of those lines of defense, each more complicated than the last. Based on Xia Chen's estimates, there wouldn't have been enough manpower in the end, and the Dragon Blood warriors would have been necessary to set things up. But with so many people, as long as they were used properly, there would be no need for the Dragon Blood warriors to lift a finger. "Are you saying I'm a wine and meat friend as well?" asked Yi Lingshan, acting angry. "I wouldn't dare," cried Long Chen hastily. Yi Lingshan rolled her eyes and had the disciples do what they wished. The disciples rolled up their sleeves and got to work. After all, they were disciples from the Martial Heaven Alliance, and they needed her go-ahead. It had to be clear who was the boss. The work that Guoran arranged for them to do was very easy. There was no skill required. It simply took time. With so many people, they rapidly progressed. Xia Chen oversaw things and would promptly fix any mistakes. All the surrounding land was quickly transformed into a giant labyrinth. When the labyrinth was complete, Xia Chen took charge, setting up his formations. After that, the labyrinth had to be filled in with earth again, requiring the earth cultivators to take action once more and compress the earth. After that, the second formation was set up. New formation lines were dug up, but not as deep as before. It was another labyrinth, but a different one and more complicated. They worked during the day and drank during the night. These few days were quite ordinary, but they were also content. On the third day, a new group from the outer branches of the divine families came. A young man announced, "Long Chen, you are breaking the rules." The heavenly divine writ clearly stated that the Dragon Blood Legion must defend on their own for 3 days. Right now, you are using other people. This young man might be acting calm, but his trembling voice sold him out. It was clear he was afraid. The old fellows of the outer branches didn't dare to face Long Chen, so they had sent a scapegoat. This young man's cultivation base was only at the midlife star realm and was weak like he was a scholar. Any random person here was capable of taking his life. Senior apprentice brother Long Chen, they're being forced. "Please don't make things hard on them," said Li Jing. She felt sympathy for these people. Long Chen nodded to indicate she could be at ease. Looking at these people, he said, "Since you're just passing on other people's words, I won't make things hard on you. Remember my words and send them back to those idiots." First, I agreed with Elder Long to block the blood race for 3 days. That starts when the battle starts. Second, even if I'm using other people, you aren't qualified to criticize me because I bought them. The meat I took out is the meat of precious ancient magical beasts, something comparable to rare medicines. It is capable of strengthening the body. I won't even mention the wine from the Wine God Palace, of which money cannot buy a single drop. Being able to buy labor with money is my own financial power, understand? Lastly, go tell those old fools that if they try to make things harder on me again, I'll slap them in the face. I'm in a good mood today, but you know, men always have a few days in a month when they aren't in a good mood. Be wary of those days when my mood isn't so good, remember? Yes, we'll remember. Those disciples hastily left to report this. After that, the outer branches didn't dare to make a sound. Time passed day by day. The sovereign seal was growing dimmer and dimmer. 3 days before the time that Sovereign Emoli had mentioned, the 9 formations were complete. Xia Chen formed hand seals, causing pillars of light to shine out of the ground, piercing the clouds. Light filled the land, and lines of light crossed in an incomprehensible manner to anyone but Xia Chen. Many thanks for your help, brothers. It's time to activate the formation, so to avoid any injuries, I'd ask you all to back up as much as possible. Xia Chen's voice rang out. The light soaring out of the ground suddenly exploded, forming a giant barrier that covered this area. Everyone retreated. Although it was common for formations to cause some powerful fluctuations when first activated, the vast pressure was suffocating. With the light, it was impossible to see what was happening inside. Even the Dragon Blood warriors were standing outside the formation, calmly watching. At the core of the formation, only Long Chen, Guoran, and Xia Chen remained. Guoran was inserting countless black arrows into the pillars of light, while Xia Chen was fiddling with a second formation disc which he sent underground. Everything before this was just laying the foundation. Now they were truly setting up the formation, and what they were doing were the core secrets that outsiders could not be permitted to see. The formation discs Chen was setting up were the sun discs. There could be multiple sun discs but only one mother disc. By using multiple sun discs at once, it could allow the formation to go through thousands of variations. As Chen was setting things up, he smiled. "Boss, following you was definitely the best choice of my life. This feeling of spending money is truly luxurious." By following Long Chen, Chen had plenty of resources to work with. The formations that he had dreamed of but lacked the money to create were now becoming reality. Without Long Chen's support, he would have been a bound dragon, only able to thrash in the mud without achieving his true potential. The reason he could create formations like this was thanks to Long Chen. The money is being spent well, so it's worth it. It's not just luxurious, but it also keeps us alive. Be careful. Quite a few people are definitely keeping an eye on us. This formation's secrets must not only be kept from them, but we have to be able to slip away with those secrets even after the formation ends. We're not exposing our own blood, sweat, and tears for others, said Long Chen. Long Chen didn't want Chen's masterpiece to be secretly learned by others to be used against them. Don't worry, boss. I've already modified these formation discs. Once their energy is used up, they'll automatically self-destruct and leave nothing useful behind, guaranteed Chen. Boss, let's really shock those idiots this time, Aya. With the slightest distraction from talking, a tiny arrow touched the skin on Guoran's arm. Without the slightest hesitation, he cut off his own arm. Even as the arm landed on the ground, it instantly turned black before rotting. You deserve it, said Long Chen without the slightest sympathy. The poison on these arrows came from the heavenly underworld vermilion fruit. At the start, Guoran had been unwilling to waste his best materials on these arrows, only to find that in just a few hours, the arrows themselves began to rot. After that, he had had no choice but to use the highest level of divine materials to create the arrowheads. He was unwilling to modify the entire arrow though, but just this was enough to save money without reducing their power. The arrowheads were special, with 6 barbs at the end and an incredibly sharp tip. Guoran wore special gloves to handle the poison, but they didn't cover his whole hands. As a result, the slightest touch resulted in it breaking his skin. Since he wasn't in his battle state, he didn't have the slightest ability to suppress this poison and could only cut off his arm. Damn, how many times will this repeat? Boss, just what poison is this? Guoran circulated his heavenly Tao energy, and his arm regrew. But the sweat on his forehead remained. He had suffered like this multiple times, requiring him to cut off chunks of his flesh. The poison was just too crazy. If I didn't have a few trump cards, how could I dare to carry out such a huge transaction? You just have to be careful. If you end up touching this poison with your face, then even if you don't die, you'll lose a few layers of skin, warned Long Chen. Only a nether passage expert could possibly endure this poison, but even they would only be able to endure for a while. This poison was something Long Chen had concocted from several different poisons, and although it wasn't on the same level as the giant pill he had refined, a life-star expert would definitely die from it. Without this little bit of power, Long Chen wouldn't allow the Dragon Blood warriors to face the blood race. Something unexpected could always happen, and he didn't want to see huge casualties. Guoran then decided to summon his armor before continuing. Although it was inconvenient, it was better to be safe. Since they had received help from the Martial Heaven Alliance's disciples, they finished the work ahead of schedule. They had time. Guoran and Chen spent a whole day before finishing the formation. They did various tests to confirm that everything was as expected before releasing the barrier. When the barrier was released, Long Chen noticed that the experts from the other powers had arrived. They were standing in their own regions, watching from a distance. He saw people from Pill Valley, the ancient races, the Shen beasts, the ancient family alliance, and more. They had simply occupied their own spots, some even looking like they were here to watch a show. They had tea and refreshments. Boss, do you want to use the formation to capture them all? If we do it now, I'm 70% confident, whispered Chen. These people were hateful. They were like watching a monkey show when Long Chen and the others were preparing to risk their lives. It was clearly intentional. Not a bad idea. I really am tempted. To tell the truth, Long Chen also had this urge. Just as he was considering whether he should do this or not, Chu Jianying walked over. Long Chen, what's with that look in your eyes? Do you want to consume them? Chu Jianying smiled. Chu Jianying had seen Long Chen's sharp gaze locked onto Yu Xiaoyun and the others. She was teasing, but she didn't realize that Long Chen really was thinking about it. Alliance head, you must be joking. How could I think that? Long Chen shook his head, dispelling Xia Chen's suggestion. Not realizing that, Chu Jianying looked around. Seeing the formation was complete, she asked, "Are you confident? It should be no problem. If you can't hold, don't force it. The reward isn't important. Don't get hot-headed because of some people's malicious words," warned Chu Jianying. She knew that Long Chen was smart, and Li Tianxian even said that Long Chen was more intelligent than him. But when he was angry, his intelligence instantly became zero. He could do any stupid thing. No matter how outstanding Long Chen became, in Chu Jianying's eyes, he and Yi Lingshan would always be children she had to worry about. Although Long Chen had said that if he couldn't hold, he would ask for help from the Martial Heaven Alliance, the Beitang family, and the Nangong family, she was still worried that he would do something stupid if others angered him. After knowing the old man for so long, she was even more worried. "Don't worry, Long Chen's not a fool," grumbled the old man. "Long Chen's not a fool, but you raised him into one," said Chu Jianying irritably. "Fine, I'm not going to talk." Curiously, the old man didn't argue. He just shook his head. It seemed that the two of them had reconciled, but Chu Jianying was still angry with him. "In any case, don't act on anger," said Chu Jianying in the end before returning to the Martial Heaven Alliance's camp. As for the Dragonblood Legion, they stayed at the center of the formation, watching the entrance to the Yin-Yang world. Long Chen saw that Nangong Zuyu and Beitang Rushuang had also arrived. But they didn't come over, most likely because they didn't want to disturb him. They just waved a greeting which Long Chen responded to. Time passed. Zi Yen and the elusive Music Immortal Palace's people also arrived. She smiled and nodded to Long Chen. Long Chen's heart warmed. Zi Yen was no longer targeting him and was supporting him instead. That made him feel gratified. However, when he saw the icy pill fairy, his heart turned cold. Through his experience with the God Seed in Dong Mingyu, he had found that the God Seed was actually a slave seal, but it was even better because it made the slaves' thoughts change to the point that they were willing to give up their own life. Dong Mingyu's heart had Long Chen inside it. From that point onward, she no longer believed in her god, allowing her to maintain clarity even though the gods will invaded her mind. She was able to retain herself. The pill fairy, though, was different. She had been the god's ardent follower from birth. The god had always been a supreme existence in her heart. When she was branded with the god seed, her soul completely transformed. She was no longer the kind and pure Yu Qingxian but the god's loyal servant. Long Chen looked at the pill fairy, and the pill fairy looked back at Long Chen. Their gazes intersected. Within the pill fairy's eyes, all Long Chen saw was a will to destroy. He didn't sense any of her old emotions. Long Chen couldn't help sighing inside. The pill fairy was different from Dong Mingyu. Her god seed had already invaded her soul. No one could save her. There would definitely be a battle to the death between him and the pill fairy. Long Chen also saw Kunpingzi and Tian Xiezi. Their auras had grown more frightening. Their gazes were sharp when they looked toward Long Chen. Killing intent raged in the space between them. Rumbling even rang out in space as just their killing intent was able to influence the heavenly Daos. Long Chen, hopefully you don't die. If I don't personally cut off your head, it'll be my life's greatest regret, said Tian Xiezi, his voice insidious. It contained a special sound wave that made it resound throughout heaven and earth. Tian Xiezi's voice resounded through the air. The Dragonblood warriors' weapons instantly appeared in their hands. The righteous and corrupt paths had such deep hatred for each other that only blood could wipe it away. If you dare to repeat what you just said, I'll make sure you disappear from this world forever, said Long Chen. His words were concise and incredibly domineering. When looked at Tian Xiezi, his gaze was like calm water. This fool, how does he get so easily provoked all the time? Beitang Rushuang cursed. Tian Xiezi was clearly intent on disturbing Long Chen so that the latter wouldn't be able to focus when the battle started. This was just a test. Since Long Chen had gotten angry here, then once the Blood Race's army arrived, he could casually say some random stuff to infuriate Long Chen. Such a simple trick actually worked on Long Chen? Tian Xiezi sneered. He was about to repeat himself when Xie Wendian suddenly pulled on him, most likely speaking spiritually with him. Tian Xiezi stopped, but the disdain on his face grew, irritating them. "Boss, should we eliminate them?" asked Xia Qin. "It's useless. They're too far. If we attacked, they would just slip away." "It's not worth the effort," said Long Chen. He could see that Tian Xiezi had encountered some kind of fortune, causing his combat power to grow greatly from when they had previously fought. If Tian Xiezi had repeated himself, then Long Chen would have gone to personally test him. If Tian Xiezi had repeated such words of malice, Long Chen would have had enough reason to attack without the divine families being able to do anything. The feeling that Tian Xiezi gave Long Chen was different from before. His aura had clearly transformed, becoming darker. However, Long Chen wasn't afraid. Tian Xiezi looked away, sitting down and closing his eyes to meditate. Since Tian Xiezi didn't speak again, Long Chen also wasn't in a position to attack. Long Chen looked over at the Shimen family's experts. Shimen Tianxiong had come, but he hadn't said a word. He expressed neither hostility nor friendliness. At the rear, there was a disturbance when the Dongfang family's people arrived. Dongfang Yuyang had also come, and countless experts looked at him with odd expressions. Spiritual fluctuations began to weave through the air as they began to secretly discuss him. Although no one was able to tell what they were saying, it definitely revolved around how the sea demon race had attacked the Dongfang family and slapped Dongfang Yuyang in the face. Dongfang Yuyang had failed to harm Long Chen and was instead attacked. For such a thing to happen to the Dongfang family, it was both shocking and comical. Dongfang Yuyang didn't react at all, and his expression was as calm as if nothing had happened. He was still graceful and elegant. However, when Long Chen looked at him, Long Chen's pupils shrank. Dong Mingyu stood beside Long Chen and noticed. "Big brother Long Chen, what is it?" "Dongfang Yuyang is strange. He's giving me a hair-raising feeling. He has most likely gained control of some kind of forbidden energy," said Long Chen heavily. That energy was something that gave Long Chen a familiar feeling, but he wasn't able to figure out what it was. Kun Pingzi had also arrived, and his eyes now held a world of lightning. He was like a lightning god, and lightning followed him, wrapping around his body. Long Chen found that all of them had made huge advancements after the last battle. They were like completely different people. All the resources of their respective factions must have been piled upon them. However, the most shocking of them all was Di Feng. He had not just awoken his spirit blood, but his manifestation was also vaguely visible behind him without him summoning it. The current Di Feng no longer had eyes full of rancor and hate. Instead, he was full of confidence. When he looked at Long Chen in particular, battle intent soared out of him. He sneered, "Long Chen, put on a good show, or I'll be disappointed. I'm greatly looking forward to our next battle." "Even a widower can smile so happily?" "Di Feng, it seems that you really hope for your life to end," responded Long Chen. "Most of the time, a man would have too many wives and concubines to be called a widower when one of them died. But some women were so powerful that their men could only have one wife, and when that woman died, her husband would be called a widower." Di Feng's followers, who were people from the Blood Emperor's family, glared at Long Chen, their eyes full of killing intent. "Long Chen, don't be so arrogant. Once the time of the heavenly divine writ passes, we will personally cut off your head as vengeance for our mighty emperor's daughter," shouted one of the elders from the Shui family. "Idiot, that woman was killed by me, Mo Nian. What does it have to do with Long Chen? If you want to find vengeance, you can come to find me." Just at that moment, Mo Nian's figure appeared, a bow on his back. Mo Nian came all alone, but for some reason his bow was no longer blazing with divine light. However, its aura had become even more frightening. You're both accomplices in the death of Shui Luocha. I will personally cut off your heads to appease her noble spirit, said Di Feng coldly. Up to you. It's meaningless to say such things now. You know what you've done to my Mo family, so adding some more enmity into the mix doesn't do anything. A blood debt must be paid in blood, said Mo Nian indifferently. Mo Nian walked over to the Martial Heaven Alliance's camp. He said his greetings to Chu Jianying and the old man before finding a place to watch. As time passed, more and more experts arrived. However, they all stood at a great distance, not daring to approach. The sovereign seal grew dimmer and dimmer. Through the sovereign seal, it was possible to see countless figures gathering within a twisted space. All kinds of sharp cries came from the other side of the sovereign seal. It seemed that the other side was gathering and raising their morale. Those sharp cries made people tense up. The blood race's invasion would signify the start of the Dark Era. The Martial Heaven continent was about to enter a long war for survival. Countless people would be fighting, and no one could guarantee that they would survive. The figures on the other side gradually grew clearer as the seal dimmed. When the endless army of the blood race became visible, everyone gasped. There was no way to estimate their numbers. They were simply endless, looking like fiends that had crawled out of hell, blood runes revolving around them. Although their form was similar to humans, their eyes were scarlet. Looking into their eyes, people smelled death. This is the blood race? They looked even more frightening than the devil race. Perhaps it was because they looked so similar to humans. In any case, there was a sense of unease. Their gaze was especially bloody. Separated by a flimsy barrier, they also looked into the Martial Heaven continent's side. They roared like hungry magical beasts demanding fresh meat. A wild light appeared in their eyes. The yin-yang world is no longer the same as when we entered. Back then, it was full of thrumming life, but now, it's dark and sinister. There's only death. One of the Martial Heaven Alliance's disciples spoke up, his voice shuddering. He had once fought alongside Long Chen in the yin-yang world, but the current yin-yang world was a barren land without the slightest blade of grass growing. The yin-yang world is split into the yin world and the yang world. We entered when the yang world was facing the Martial Heaven continent. But the yin-yang world revolves, and now the yin world is facing us. The yin world is a land of death and also the favorite environment of the blood race. Everyone, you have to be careful. When the seal breaks, the yin world's death chi will pour into the continent. But you don't need to worry. That will just be temporary, and by activating your domain, you will be able to block it. The opposing laws of the Martial Heaven continent will stifle the death chi, warned Chu Jianying. There are so many of them, and their auras are all so powerful. Will senior apprentice brother Long Chen and the others be all right? Asked one person worriedly. Be at ease. To say that it won't take the slightest effort from them would be bragging, but this shouldn't be anything to the Dragonblood Legion. The main thing is what comes later, said Mo Nian. The blood race's army roared, baring their fangs at the Dragonblood Legion which was closest to them. As the commanding general of the Dragonblood Legion, Guo Ran stood at the front. He arrogantly beckoned to the blood race and then patted his butt at them. The blood race's experts seemed to understand what Guo Ran was saying, and they charged forward. As a result, since the sovereign seal had not yet broken, thousands of them were instantly blown to bits. Haha. Guo Ran laughed arrogantly. If the blood race only had this level of intelligence, he wasn't worried. Boom. Just at that moment, the sovereign seal seemed to have used up its final bit of energy and exploded in a rain of light. When the sovereign seal exploded, everyone's hearts tightened, both friend and foe. Even their breathing became heavy. That was the blood race on the other side, the mortal enemy of the Martial Heaven continent. They wanted to annihilate everyone and everything on the continent. In front of such an enemy, no one could remain relaxed. Kill! The blood race's experts actually knew how to speak the human language, and they charged forward like a tide. Brothers, go ahead. Release your passion, shouted Guo Ran, waving his hand. The Dragon Blood warriors unsheathed their swords, rays of divine light tearing through the sky. They actually pounced on the charging blood race. What are they doing? After spending all that time setting up a grand formation, are they just going to fight like this? Exclaimed one of the seniors. These seniors had assumed that Long Chen would use the grand formation to lock down this area and use absolute defense to stop the blood race's attack. However, the Dragon Blood Legion wasn't using their formation at all. Their warriors were simply charging out. Had they just been bored when they set up their formation? These enemies are only at the Life Star realm and aren't worth it. To the Dragon Blood Legion, this is just a warm-up, not a battle, said the old man lightly. The old man's words had barely left his lips when the Dragon Blood warriors began slaughtering the Blood Race's army. Sword images slashed through them. What terrifying attacks! Last time, the Dragon Blood warriors had been protected by a formation and displayed a collective attack that had swept through their enemies. Now though, everyone saw that even when the Dragon Blood warriors were fighting individually, they were still extremely terrifying existences. Every one of them was incredibly powerful. Even in such an important battle, their expressions were completely calm. They really are elites, worthy of being called the Martial Heaven Continent's #1 Legion. The Dragon Blood warriors were so powerful that the Blood Race's army was unable to even get close. Some of them tried to sneak attack the Dragon Blood warriors, but they were killed in a heartbeat. The Dragon Blood warriors' swords would just swing to the side or even behind them, slaying the sneak attackers. Such a thing didn't just require immense power, but also astonishing spiritual perception. They all possessed a strong sense of danger that allowed them to control the changes of the battlefield. Even surrounded by attacks, they could choose the best move in an instant. It sounded simple, but in reality, it was as difficult as ascending the heavens. This was an ability that could only be cultivated through experiencing countless battles, countless brushes against death. Thus, even though the Dragon Blood warriors were fighting individually, the Blood Race was rapidly cut down. With each attack, a mass of the Blood Race's experts died. The righteous experts who had come were completely dazzled by this scene. These were true experts. I heard that every member of the Dragon Blood Legion used to be an ordinary person, but under Long Chen's lead, they've reached their current height. Long Chen's not just a peerless genius. He's a miracle maker. The neutral faction's people were also swept up in various emotions. Without any backers, Long Chen had created a miracle like the Dragon Blood Legion. That was a heaven-defying ability. Pill Valley, the Corrupt Path, the Shen beasts, and the others were afraid. The Dragon Blood Legion had grown up. If they kept growing, they would be a dangerous threat to their very existence. We cannot allow them to grow any further. A vicious light appeared in Yu Xiaoyun's eyes. But with the divine families keeping watch over here, he couldn't do anything. In the face of the tide of the Blood Race, the Dragon Blood warriors' swords created a rain of flesh and blood. However, their numbers were still insufficient. A few of their enemies managed to slip through the cracks. Long Chen, if you allow a single Blood Race expert to get by, you will have failed. Don't even think about getting the reward in that case, shouted one of the experts of the Divine Family's outer branches from up in the sky. They were overseeing the battle. Long Chen wasn't even interested enough to look at them. They were trying to apply pressure to him. Boom! A giant willow exploded out of the void, and countless willow branches appeared, piercing through the Blood Race experts that managed to get past the Dragon Blood warriors. Those Blood Race experts quickly withered upon being pierced by the willow branches. Lu Ruyan directly sucked away their bloodline power. You said that the essence blood of those I kill goes to me. Can I count on that? Lu Ruyan's voice rang out in Long Chen's mind. Yes, no one will fight over it with you. You'll get however much you kill. Long Chen helplessly smiled. Even now, Lu Ruyan was wary of him as if he would break his word. For Lu Ruyan to be able to refine her own immemorial essence blood from the Blood Race was a bit surprising to Long Chen. It seemed that her origins were far from simple. After hearing Long Chen's words, Lu Ruyan's body grew until the entire entrance was bottled up. No one could get through. Lu Ruyan's branches were sharp and endless. The Blood Race's experts were pierced through and had their essence blood sucked away. Ruyan needs to accumulate a large amount of essence blood to break through her current bottleneck. She started gathering it even in the last battle. Chu Yao stealthily sent a message to Long Chen. Why didn't she tell me? I could have thought of something for her. Long Chen was surprised. Dummy, do you not know her temper? She wouldn't ask for help even if she was dying, let alone asking for help from you, rebuked Chu Yao. Lu Ruyan was stubborn and cold. Her iciness was similar to Yi Zhiqiu, but Yi Zhiqiu was warm inside. Meanwhile, Lu Ruyan was cold inside and out. Other than Chu Yao, she rarely spoke to anyone. Furthermore, Lu Ruyan still disliked Long Chen for having suppressed her with the black soil. That had always been viewed as a humiliation to her. Even now that they were one family, she was still unable to forgive him. She mostly ignored Long Chen, so for her to ask him for help was impossible. That was why Chu Yao secretly mentioned this to Long Chen to avoid him feeling a grudge, as if Lu Ruyan was unwilling to share the immemorial essence blood with everyone else. In truth, as the Dragon Blood warriors fought, the formation beneath their feet was already active. According to Elder Long, this formation would gather the blood race's essence blood as it rained down from the sky. It could later be refined into immemorial essence blood. However, that was just the start. The blood race's essence blood was not the same as the human race's essence blood. To merge them required several steps. This essence blood would belong to the Dragon Blood Legion, but the ones that Lu Ruyan killed would have their essence blood go to her. Chu Yao even brought up that Lu Ruyan wanted to advance to make sure that Long Chen didn't blame her for being selfish. Long Chen simply smiled and shook his head. Lu Ruyan was unyielding. If she had said this earlier, he would have long since brought her to the wild world to start her preparations. Long Chen told Chu Yao that this wasn't a big deal. They were entering the Dark Era, so slaughter would be present at all times. Lu Ruyan would have plenty of blood to gather. Long Chen, Chu Yao, Meng Qi, Tang Wen, Yi Zhiqiu, and the others were all just watching from the rear alongside the healing warriors. Gu Yang, Yu Zifeng, Li Qi, and Song Mingyuan weren't fighting either. Currently, there was no need for them to partake in the battle. Li Jing had been worried, because according to the outer branches of the Divine Family, she was to follow the Dragon Blood Legion, and if they died, she would die too. That was one reason she had been so nervous when she came. Seeing that Long Chen didn't even need to fight, that just the Dragon Blood warriors and Lu Ruyan could stop the blood race, her tense heart relaxed. She felt much safer. The blood race's army grew stronger over time. Eventually, some larger ones appeared, their arms incredibly thick, thicker than even their legs. Blood chains wrapped around their arms, and they held blood-colored sabers several meters long. They seemed to be a physically powerful subrace amongst the blood race. Senior apprentice brother Long Chen, this is the Titanic arm blood race. Their physical power is limitless, and they are the true warriors of their army. In comparison, the other ordinary experts of the blood race are just ants. You have to warn the others to be careful, said Li Jing. Long Chen shook his head. If they're only on that level, then there's no need. One of the Titanic arm blood experts charged forward, his thick saber slashing down. The immense power brought with it a screeching whistling sound. Boom! That Titanic arm blood expert was sent flying back by one of the Dragon Blood warriors. It crashed heavily into the ones behind it, causing them to cough up blood. The Titanic arm blood expert seemed to have been angered, and a bloody light appeared in its eyes. It once more attacked. Dragon Blood battle armor. That Dragon Blood warrior let out a shout, and blood-colored scales covered his body. His sword hacked down like a bolt of lightning. Sword chi flashed, and that Titanic arm blood expert, along with its saber, turned to dust. Heavens! Li Jing covered her mouth, not daring to believe what she was seeing. The incredibly powerful Titanic arm blood race could still have its experts killed in one blow by a Dragon Blood warrior. The arrival of the Titanic arm blood race allowed the Dragon Blood warriors to really start fighting. As more of them appeared, the Dragon Blood warriors summoned their Dragon Blood battle armor, starting the real battle. Even though there were now countless Titanic arm blood experts, the Dragon Blood warriors were still unfazed. Their swords danced, tearing through their enemies. In this life, all I want is to be able to match a dragon blood warrior. Then I could die without regrets, sighed one of the Martial Heaven Alliance's disciples. Although they viewed Long Chen as an idol, a target that encouraged them, that target was just too far, so far that it felt imaginary. Now they felt like just being able to match a dragon blood warrior was a huge wish. The dragon blood warriors have fought with senior apprentice brother Long Chen through countless brushes against death to become true experts, while we're like flowers that grew up in a greenhouse. We still have a long path to walk, responded someone else. Actually, we can also imitate senior apprentice brother Long Chen. What are you going to imitate? Do you not want your life any longer? An elder scolded that last disciple. If everyone imitated Long Chen, then just how many thorns would appear in the Martial Heaven Alliance? Managing these disciples was already very difficult. Go too light and they wouldn't listen, go too hard and they would get resentful. With how many people there were in the Martial Heaven Alliance, it was even harder to oversee them. Although Yi Lingshan was able to suppress them, when she wasn't present, those fellows were very stubborn, with quite a few arguments springing up between them. If they were to imitate Long Chen, wouldn't the Martial Heaven Alliance be torn apart by them? Riches lie within danger. Isn't senior apprentice brother Long Chen the best example? Said that disciple, unconvinced. Don't you need to look at your own conditions? Long Chen has always been an apex expert at every realm, and yet, do you know how many times he has brushed past the god of death? How many times has he narrowly escaped from death? Even an expert on his level barely scrapes by, like someone walking across a thin layer of ice over a bottomless abyss. And now you want to be able to dance on the tip of a blade easily like he does? Well, let me tell you, any kind of skill has hardships behind it. You see his light without seeing the pain behind it. You think he's just brainlessly charging forward and being unstoppable? He's a fake idiot, while you're the real idiots. Without Long Chen's power, if you try to copy his temper, you'll all die miserably, said the elder. What he wanted to say was that the only person who could court death every day and still live happily, from ancient times to now, was Long Chen. If anyone imitated him, they definitely wouldn't live longer than 3 days. However, some things couldn't be said directly. If he said that, these young and ambitious fellows really might try it. Yi Lingshan glanced at the disciples and saw their expressions of displeasure. She said, "Don't panic, the Dark Era's curtains have been pulled open by this battle, so you don't need to worry about not having a chance to temper yourselves. I feel like true experts shouldn't be competing for number one, but protecting their homes and families and even all lives. If you die due to a competitive streak, others will only look at you with disdain. But if you died protecting the Martial Heaven continent, you would be a hero, and the entire world will remember your name. Think about the 5 sovereigns. Which one of them relied on fighting people from the same side to get famous? Without exception, their fame grew due to suppressing the fiends from the other side. Even though tens of thousands of years have passed, their marks still remain. True heroes will only reveal their true light at such a time. The main character of this world has yet to be revealed." Yi Lingshan's words were gentle and also very reasonable, instantly placating these disciples. Her meaning was clear. A sovereign had yet to appear in this era. In the future, who would float to the top and who would sink to the bottom was still unknown. In other words, as long as a sovereign had yet to appear, then any one of them could become the sovereign. As long as they weren't ridiculously arrogant or unduly humble, anyone had a chance. Chu Jianying smiled upon seeing Yi Lingshan suppress the dissatisfaction of these disciples with just a few words. She whispered to the old man, "I'm glad my vision wasn't blind with old age before finding a good apprentice. She's much better at handling things than me." The old man nodded. Yes, the you from back then would have directly said, "You think you're badass? If you don't like it, you can challenge me and see if you can take the Alliance head position." A few of the surrounding elders couldn't hold back a chuckle, before feeling a chill as Chu Jianying's murderous gaze fell on them. They hastily shut their mouths and acted like they hadn't heard anything. "Do you want to die?" Chu Jianying glared at the old man. He had actually exposed this awkward incident of her past in front of so many people. The main thing though was that she had truly said it, And more than once at that. These old fellows had heard her say it too, which was why they couldn't help laughing. Can I not tell the truth? The old man acted like he hadn't done anything wrong. Chu Jianying could only glare. She didn't want to get crabby with the old man's stubbornness here, or she would be laughed at. Although she was admiring Yi Lingshan and praising her, there was also a kind of recognition of her own vision in picking her out. Regretfully, the old man didn't understand that. Rather than praising Chu Jianying, he took a completely different view and didn't even know where he was wrong. In Chu Jianying's eyes, the old man was stubborn and insensitive. If he had just a tenth of Long Chen's brains, he wouldn't draw her into fights every day. The Dragon Blood warriors have taken out their manifestations. They're fighting at full power now, said the old man suddenly. Chu Jianying immediately looked over to see that the Titanic arm blood experts had grown more numerous, and they were no longer all within the Life Star realm. Some Nether Passage realm experts had appeared in their midst. The pressure on the Dragon Blood warriors instantly jumped when Nether Passage realm blood race experts appeared. They had no choice but to summon their manifestations. These blood race experts are stronger physically than their human counterparts, but their divine abilities and magical arts are rough. Even before unleashing any big attacks, their auras fluctuate, making the attacks easy to dodge. Their true combat power is actually inferior to the human race, said one elder. However, their numbers were too great. There was an endless tide of them. They also knew their own weaknesses and were using numbers to make up for them. That's precisely why they want to attack us. They want our spirit roots to make up for their innate weaknesses. That's what makes them the most frightening, said Chu Jianying. The current blood race wasn't too powerful. What would be powerful was a blood race that had managed to charge onto the continent and turn the human race into tools for upgrading themselves. The blood race's howls filled the air. Through the willow branches, the spectators could only get glimpses of the Dragon Blood warriors. Mostly they only managed to see the blood race. This sight made them turn pale. In a 1-against-1, they weren't afraid of the blood race. Even if it was 1-against-10, they wouldn't be afraid. But the blood race's army could not be counted with numbers. They could only be described as endless. In front of such a terrifying army, no matter how much combat experience you had, you would still drown. When these people thought about themselves, they wondered how long they would be able to last. 1 breath? 2 breaths? Or would they be annihilated in an instant? The fight between the Dragon Blood Legion and the various powers of the continent had been intense enough, having involved millions of experts. However, in comparison to the endless blood race, they were like a streamlet compared to a sea. Now people understood what the Dark Era represented. In front of this endless army, it was impossible to see any hope. Right now, they were just facing one army from one other world. This was just the Yin-Yang world, and there were more connections to other worlds where the seals had yet to break. If they all broke at the same time, how would the Martial Heaven continent stop them? As the Blood Race's army charged out, they crashed against Lu Ruyan's defenses. Her branches were like arrows, tearing them apart. Even those in the Nether Passage realm were easily pierced. Lu Ruyan's branches were both tough and flexible. It was difficult for anything to cut them. No matter how the blood race tried, they were unable to break her defenses. Lu Ruyan's giant body had roots in the ground and was like a giant mountain. Blood mist exploded as her branches whipped through the air. It was a miserable sight. The blood race had only been attacking for an incense stick's worth of time, but Lu Ruyan had killed 1 million of them. How does Long Chen have so many monsters under his command? That Lu Ruyan is so powerful. Why would she be willing to be Long Chen's subordinate? The rest haven't even taken action, and they're all monsters. Perhaps only a monster amongst monsters like Long Chen can make them all follow him. Lu Ruyan's viciousness shook everyone. But then they also saw the others standing calmly with Long Chen. A monstrous expert like Lu Ruyan was someone that any sect would be willing to pay any price to pull in. Such a figure was as rare as a phoenix feather or a unicorn horn. However, any random person pulled from Long Chen's side was such a monster. Furthermore, they were all completely loyal to him, and it was impossible to pull them to another side. As more and more of the blood race's experts appeared, the pressure on the battlefield grew. Lu Ruyan's barrier gradually began to shake and show signs of breaking. Everyone's hearts clenched. Many people had made preparations to join in if the Dragonblood Legion failed. They couldn't allow a single blood race expert to charge onto the continent. Endless falling wood, earth covers the heavens. Lu Ruyan let out a cry, and forming hand seals, the earth exploded. Roots covered in earth rose into the sky. The earth exploded, and a huge net of earthen roots covered the sky, enveloping the blood race's experts. There was nowhere for the blood race's experts to go. Earthen net slaughter. Lu Ruyan shouted once more, and that net shrank in an instant. The roars of the blood race experts inside were cut off like they were severed with a knife. Blood dripped out of the ball of earth in the sky. In one move, Lu Ruyan had emptied over half of the battlefield. What a vicious move! Even Long Chen jumped. He had never seen this move of Lu Ruyan's, so it was most likely a new technique she had just learned. Before this, Lu Ruyan only relied on her branches to attack. She had never attacked with her roots. Ruyan's roots are her true killing tools. Her roots and branches manifest yin and yang, forming a cycle. According to her, if it wasn't for the yin-yang immortal grass's help, it would have taken her centuries to comprehend this ability. The cycle of yin and yang contains the essence of heaven and earth. In this state, she cannot be destroyed, and her power is endless as long as there is still energy within heaven and earth, said Chu Ya with praise. Lu Ruyan's power had surpassed everyone's expectations. The Undying Willow race was extremely powerful. Thanks to Lu Ruyan, everyone had a chance to breathe. Lu Ruyan's roots returned to the ground, and her branches continued slaughtering the blood race experts. Xia Chen's expression suddenly darkened. He looked behind him. What is it? Asked Long Chen. Boss, someone is secretly siphoning the blood mist in the air to take away a portion of the essence blood, said Xia Chen. Xia Chen was in control of the Grand Formation. Although it didn't look like it was doing anything, it was active underground. Through that formation, Xia Chen was absorbing the essence blood for when the battle was over. Naturally, he had been keeping an eye on things from the start, and when Lu Ruyan instantly killed so many of the blood race experts, Xia Chen sensed some kind of force stealthily absorbing the blood mist. Although it was well hidden, even managing to slip past Long Chen's sharp spiritual perception, Xia Chen's formation still caught it. Is it the outer branches of the divine families? Asked Long Chen. Xia Chen nodded. Boss, what do you want to do? Do you want to give them a bit of real blood to deal with? Don't be so petty. Give them more than a bit. Long Chen smiled. Xia Chen also smiled and stealthily formed some one-handed seals. Within the camp of the divine family's outer branches, there was one elder holding a palm-sized furnace. The furnace had blood stains on it, and as the formation inside it worked, blood mist began to appear inside it, condensing into one drop after another. Hundreds of elders were surrounding this elder, blocking others from seeing his tiny movements. Too slow. Can you go faster? This little bit of essence blood isn't enough to share, said one of the other elders. I can't go too fast. If we're noticed, that would be bad, said the elder with the furnace cautiously. What are you afraid of? They're just a bunch of novices who have never seen the blood race before. They don't have this experience. If we don't take a bit of advantage, we'd be idiots. Hurry up. Just how little will each of us get at this rate? Demanded the first elder. Fine. The elder with the furnace hesitated but seemed to feel that the other elder's words were reasonable. Thus, the furnace in his hand grew until it was a foot long. The mist gathering inside the furnace grew denser. More essence blood began to condense inside. A bit bigger would still be all right. We'll use magical arts to block you from other people's senses. The first elder was amazed at seeing so much essence blood, but he was still unsatisfied. When he looked over at Long Chen and the others and saw that they weren't acting odd, his guts grew. Hence, the furnace grew again, becoming the size of a person. More and more essence blood gathered. That's about enough. Don't release its divine power, cried the first elder. This was too conspicuous. Stop, stop. Others will see. Someone whispered angrily at them. The furnace's aura had grown along with its size, and the surrounding people were starting to look over. Hurry and stop. What's wrong with you? Shouted the first elder. The elder controlling the furnace was pale. Terrified, he said, I can't control it. The furnace suddenly grew until it was the size of a mountain. The other members of the outer branches were startled. What are they doing? Everyone's attention shifted from the Dragonblood Legion to the outer branches of the divine families. Seeing their panicked state, they couldn't understand what was going on at first. They're taking the essence blood. In just a moment, people saw traces of blood flowing through the air into the furnace. Despicable. Didn't they say that all the rewards for this battle would go to Long Chen alone? The Dragonblood Legion is fighting a bloody battle at the front, while the outer branches of the divine families tried to steal from them. Isn't that too shameless? People were dumbfounded. Were the outer branches of the divine families really shameless to this extent? The furnace continued to grow, and its suction force also magnified. Their little plot was completely exposed. The Righteous Path's experts began to curse at them. Is there really anyone as shameless as you? Can the outer branches of the divine families care at least a bit about face? Hearing their cursing, seeing their disbelief, those elders wanted to dig a hole to bury themselves in. It's a misunderstanding. This blood-condensing furnace has its own spirit, and it automatically activated to absorb the blood race's essence blood. We can't control it. Don't you see us trying to stop it? Shouted the first elder. That wily old fox instantly found a good excuse. That explanation was questionable to people. It was true that these elders were trying to suppress the furnace. That excuse is really good. Xiachen laughed. His hand's seal suddenly changed and the earth quivered. Boom. The furnace exploded, and a terrifying burst of power blasted apart the elders controlling the furnace. That sudden change was even more dumbfounding. The furnace was just a quasi-divine item, and it wasn't even a battle-divine item. How could its explosion be so violent? Hundreds of Nether Passage experts were killed in an instant. Nicely done. Gu Yang patted Xiachen on the shoulder and gave him a thumbs up. Ha! Guoran laughed, causing everyone to look over. Guoran immediately sensed that it was wrong and apologized. Sorry, I'm new here and don't know the rules. Am I supposed to laugh directly or wait in line? That appearance of his that looked like it needed a spanking made even Meng Qi, Chu Yao, and the others chortle. Gu Yang and the others on the other hand laughed without any restraint. The outer branches of the divine families had come with fewer than 1,000 people, and the explosion of the furnace had killed hundreds of them. The elders further away were coughing up blood. Seeing Long Chen and the others laughing and patting themselves on the back, one of the elders shouted, "Bastards, you did this! You killed so many of our elders. Just wait when I report this to the divine families. Hey, are you an idiot? Are you blind or are you deaf? Didn't you hear those elders say that the furnace had its own spirit and they were unable to control it? The furnace exploded because it absorbed too much essence blood, killing them. What does it have to do with us?" Sneered Guoran. You. That elder was gobsmacked. In truth, he had known what was happening. As those elders stealthily absorbed the essence blood, he simply acted like he hadn't seen anything. Of course, if it had been pulled off, he would have had his own share. Since Long Chen and the others were laughing, they had clearly done something. But he couldn't do anything to them because if he proved that they had done something, it would also prove that those people had been stealing the essence blood. He was stuck. You're clearly laughing at misfortune. We sacrificed our people to stop the furnace explosion, and you laugh at us? That's clear disrespect to the divine families. The elders switched tactics, using the signboard of the divine families. Give it up. Do you not know what your own side was doing? And you even have the face to bring up the divine families? You've lost all the face of the divine families. Furthermore, what's wrong with laughing? You lost control of your furnace, so why can't we laugh for the heroic display of the Dragonblood warriors? What a terrible excuse, mocked Guoran. Guoran's words were very sinister. He had almost directly said what had happened. If they could be shameless, then he would be shameless too. If they didn't care about face, then he wouldn't care about face either. Just who was afraid of who? The spectators had also guessed what had happened. Looking at the outer branches of the divine families, they shook their heads contemptuously. The Yi family's dogs are just like their masters. That little fellow is correct. The divine family's face has been completely lost by them. Up in the void, Chengfeng and his experts coldly witnessed what happened below. Killing intent flowed out of him. He had an urge to go down and slaughter all of them. They were hiding in the void through a formation. They were far away enough that no one knew they were there. Commander, what is the Yi family doing? These outer branches are completely out of line. Can't they properly manage them? One of the experts beside Chengfeng frowned. That person was a nether passage expert. He looked to be in his 30s, but his eyes spoke of things he had seen. He was a true expert, someone who had followed Chengfeng for many years and had always been his right arm. The interior of the divine families is too complicated. Some things aren't for us to ask. But these outer branches really make me want to choke them, said Chengfeng hatefully. This Long Chen's not bad. He has power and wits. He killed so many of them, and yet they don't dare do anything to him. They don't even dare to make a sound, praised his right-hand man. Wits? How come I don't see any? Chengfeng laughed. If Long Chen really had wits, he wouldn't be the enemy of almost the entire world. If he had wits, he would be slick and sly, knowing how to switch tactics to different situations, knowing how to avoid danger. At the very least, in these areas, he didn't see any wits from Long Chen. This Long Chen is truly a marvel. If he can be raised properly, perhaps he can become a sharp weapon. Chengfeng said, he is a double-sided sword. The higher-ups might not like him. Only children that listen get to eat their fill, and Long Chen clearly isn't one. Although Elder Long likes Long Chen, to get the full support of the divine families would be extremely difficult. Just think, to have 10,000 people block the attack of the blood race. It's clear that the higher-ups have stringent requirements for Long Chen. Commander, do you feel like Long Chen will succeed? Chengfeng shook his head. It's difficult to say. If we were following the historical records, then perhaps the Dragon Blood Legion would have been able to last 3 days. But this time, the Qi flow eruption was extremely strong. That indicates that this tribulation is on a completely unprecedented level. The Dragon Blood Legion managed to occupy the strongest Qi flow stream, but that advantage will only show upon advancing to the Nether Passage realm. Currently, they don't have that much of an advantage. There were a few aspects to the Qi flow eruption. One was that within the Qi flow stream, it was easy to charge through bottlenecks and shackles without the foundation becoming unsteady. Instead, the foundation would only grow more stable. Another aspect was that those supported by the Qi flow would be blessed by heaven and earth. However, that kind of blessing would only truly manifest in the Nether Passage realm. Breaking through to the Nether Passage realm was the most dangerous bottleneck in the cultivation world. The odds of death were extremely high. In fact, part of it didn't even relate to power or talent. Sometimes it was just luck. Some powerful geniuses had died when advancing to the Nether Passage realm, while some people who hadn't had much hope at all had managed to succeed. The Nether Passage realm was the most difficult realm to understand on the path of cultivation. Even the Qi flow eruption couldn't change that iron law. If they wanted to enjoy the benefits of the Qi flow, they had to enter the Nether Passage realm first. So the current Dragon Blood Legion was truly at a disadvantage. However, at least up until now, the Dragon Blood Legion has been fighting very steadily. They haven't needed to use any big moves. This was true. The Dragon Blood warriors were still fighting individually, and Lu Ruyan was able to stop any stragglers. Chengfeng once more shook his head. You don't understand. The yin-yang world is different from our battlefield. The ones coming out right now are just cannon fodder. Their elites want them to die. They want them to die? For what? Because you haven't entered the core of the divine families, you don't understand. Last time, Elder Long told me he received some reliable intel that these invading races have been accumulating power for countless years to the point that they are no longer able to endure that burden. In other words, the blood race has raised too many warriors, to the point that there aren't enough resources to go around. This is their way of reducing their burden. They sent cannon fodder against the Sovereign Seal, and now that the Sovereign Seal is gone, the cannon fodder has lost any value, and so they're sending them through. The divine families had their own ways to gather intel, but only those on the level of Elder Long were qualified to receive that intel. As for Shen Chengfeng, he wasn't qualified. He had only heard Elder Long mention it. Elder Long had mentioned this to Shen Chengfeng to make sure that he was mentally prepared. He couldn't get paralyzed by any sudden changes, or it could be calamitous. The experts behind Shen Chengfeng were dumbfounded. If that really was the case, then just what kind of terrifying level had the blood race grown to? Now you know why our 8th Legion was called from the ancient battlefield. Even I thought that this was just a minor matter. The remnant sovereign aura prevents those at the 4th step of Nether Passage and above from entering, so this should be an easy battle. However, the blood race has too many members and can use flood tactics to overwhelm us, while leaving its elites for the final blow. We cannot be careless, warned Shen Chengfeng. Yes. The experts behind him assented. They put away their indifference and began to carefully examine the battlefield. Sword chi was sweeping through the battlefield. It was a bitter sight seeing so many bodies being sliced apart. The dragon blood warriors were covered in blood, but that blood belonged to the blood race. Lu Ruyan's giant willow body was still blocking the channel. Not one fish got through the net. Whenever there was a sign of things growing too intense, the earthen net move would be used once more, slaughtering them. Boss, something seems off. So many of them have died, but why is their morale completely unaffected? They even seem to be growing crazier? Asked Guyang. The blood race's experts were continuing to charge forward, completely disregarding their casualties. They stepped over countless corpses without any hesitation. It had been 6 hours since the battle had started, so their corpses had piled up into mountains. Just what kind of terrifying will was required to continue charging forward like this? This is the blood race's innate nature. The dead members of their race release a bloody chi that stimulates the nerves of the others, making them crazy and lose their minds. These blood race experts come from low-level races. Their intelligence was limited from the start, and after being affected by that bloody chi, their heads go blank, and all they know is to kill. You can't judge them like how you judge humans. Right now, they're just murderous beasts in human-like form. They might even be crazier than magical beasts. They've already lost their sense of self, and only death can make them stop, explained Li Jing. Of everyone present, no one knew more about the blood race than Li Jing. Whenever a new subrace appeared, she would instantly explain their strengths and weaknesses, as well as the best way to handle them. She had been very useful. So that's the case. I was scared, thinking that there were warriors even braver than the dragon blood warriors. Guyang breathed out in relief. This explanation put him at ease. He had been shocked by the blood race's bravery. But if they were just brainless maniacs, then there was nothing curious about it. The dragon blood warriors are true warriors. One of the Empyreans in the Beitang family couldn't help sighing. If it was a 1-against-1 fight, I'd be confident in being able to defeat them. However, if I were to fight on this battlefield, I wouldn't be able to last so long. This Empyrean had already awoken his manifestation and was one of Beitang Rushuang's 8 great bodyguards. He was extremely powerful and had quite the reputation within the Beitang family. However, he couldn't help but to praise the dragon blood warriors. This showed him that true experts always needed to sense what areas they were lacking in. Beitang Rushuang nodded. You're the only one here who dares to admit that you might be inferior to others. Just that is enough to allow you to walk much further. The Empyrean sighed. Compared to the dragon blood warriors, those of us who were blessed with the support of the Beitang family are far more fortunate. Without the Beitang family, there is no way we would have reached our current level. But they managed to reach their level by putting their lives on the line over and over again. They had to have experienced unimaginable pain to reach this level. That's why their wills are far tougher than ours. We were too blessed. Just thinking about it makes me feel ashamed. The Beitang family gave us such good conditions, and we ended up like this. Brothers, our environment was many times better than theirs, and yet we've been surpassed. How can that be justified? The Empyrean looked back at the other disciples of the Beitang family. Those disciples instantly looked down in shame. If even he could admit that he was inferior, then the rest of them were far from being able to match them. Senior apprentice brother Nuo Li will definitely work hard. We won't be inferior to anyone, shouted a disciple. Seeing the Dragonblood warriors' shocking combat power, their own pride was excited. Work hard. Nuo Li nodded. Work hard. Beitang Rushuang also raised a fist. She looked at the calm Long Chen and made a solemn vow. Working hard is correct, but the direction must be right. If you were to seize him, then the Dragonblood Legion would be your family. Wouldn't that be much more efficient than any effort on your own? The Beitang family's old family had whispered into Beitang Rushuang's ear with a mischievous smile. Grandma. Beitang Rushuang blushed. Girl, don't shout. Your grandma's vision is definitely correct. Don't you see the girl from the Nangong family also whispering? They definitely have their sights on Long Chen as well. Let me tell you, if you let her seize him first, don't come crying to me, said the old family head. Beitang Rushuang looked toward the Nangong family. There were several elders whispering with Nangong Zuyu, occasionally glancing toward Long Chen. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.